In a room full of millionaires, the cruelest thing wasn't the insult, it was the silence that followed. When a powerful CEO in a wheelchair became the target of public humiliation, everyone looked away. Everyone except the janitor mopping the floor. What happened next would expose who truly held power in that room and change everything. Before we begin, if you stay until the end of this story, you'll witness a moment that will restore your faith in humanity. Hit that like button now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's dive in. The champagne flutes caught the light like tiny prisms, scattering golden reflections across the 42nd floor. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan stretched out in a glittering sprawl of ambition and steel. But inside the Meridian Tower boardroom, the view that mattered most was the one everyone pretended not to see. Madeline Cross, sitting perfectly still in her wheelchair at the head of the table, watching her empire celebrate without her. She had built this moment. 16 months of negotiations, 7 countries, 3 sleepless acquisitions, and 1 board meeting where she'd had to prove, again, that her mind worked just fine even if her legs didn't. The Takahashi deal was supposed to be her coronation. Instead, it felt like she was attending her own funeral. To Meridian Global, someone shouted, already drunk at 9 p.m., and to making history. Glasses clinked. Laughter rolled through the room in waves that felt rehearsed, performed for an audience that included 2 senators, a tech billionaire, and Marcus Verne, the investor whose $50 million backing had turned Madeline's vision into reality. He stood near the bar, his silver hair swept back like a corporate Caesar, his smile sharp enough to cut contracts. People orbited him like planets around a sun, desperate for his warmth, terrified of his shadow. Madeline had learned to read rooms before she'd learned to read balance sheets. This one was easy. Everyone was celebrating at her, not with her. The difference was subtle, but absolute. Ms. Cross? Her assistant Rachel appeared at her side, holding a tablet like a shield. The Tokyo office confirmed the wire transfer. It's done. Official. Thank you, Rachel. Madeline took the tablet, scrolled through the confirmation, and felt nothing. Not pride, not relief. Just the hollow weight of winning a battle everyone expected her to lose. Make sure legal has the final documentation by morning. Already sent. Rachel hesitated, then lowered her voice. Are you okay? You want me to get you out of here? Madeline looked up at her assistant, loyal, competent Rachel, who'd been with her since before the accident, before the wheelchair, before everything changed. The concern in her eyes was real. That made it worse. I'm fine, Madeline said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. This is my party. I should at least make an appearance. Rachel nodded, but didn't look convinced. She melted back into the crowd, leaving Madeline alone again in a room full of people. That was when Madeline noticed him. The janitor stood near the west wall, moving a mop across marble that already gleamed. He worked with the kind of invisible efficiency that came from years of being unseen, his gray uniform blending into the background like camouflage. Most people wouldn't have noticed him at all. But Madeline had spent 2 years at eye level with the world's knees and ankles. She'd learned to see the people everyone else erased. He was maybe 40, with broad shoulders that strained slightly against his uniform shirt, and hands that moved with deliberate care. His face was unremarkable in the way that made him completely forgettable. Square jaw, brown hair cut short, the kind of features that disappeared in a crowd. But there was something in the way he moved, controlled, purposeful, like someone who'd learned to make himself small but hadn't forgotten how to be large. Their eyes met for half a second. He nodded, just once, barely perceptible, then went back to mopping. Madeline felt something shift in her chest. Respect, maybe, or recognition. The janitor was the only person in this room who didn't need anything from her, didn't want to impress her, didn't feel obligated to pretend this celebration meant something it didn't. Madeline! The voice boomed across the room, cutting through conversations like a boat through water. Marcus Verne was moving toward her, his entourage parting before him. There she is, the woman of the hour. Madeline straightened in her chair, muscle memory from years of boardroom warfare. Never show weakness. Never let them see you flinch. Marcus, she kept her voice steady, professional. Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. He stopped in front of her, too close, invading the space most people instinctively left around her wheelchair. His breath smelled like scotch and cigars. Hell of a deal you pulled off. Hell of a deal, though I'll admit, when you first pitched this acquisition, I had my doubts. Did you? It wasn't a question. Sure did. Marcus laughed, and heads turned toward the sound like sunflowers following light. I mean, let's be honest, Takahashi's old guard, they're traditional, conservative. I wasn't sure they'd work with someone in your situation. The room got quieter. Not silent, that would have been too obvious, but conversations lowered to a hum, and Madeline could feel attention shifting toward them like gravity tilting. My situation, Madeline repeated slowly, each word precise as a scalpel, didn't prevent me from increasing Meridian's market value by 37% in 18 months. No, of course not. Marcus raised his glass in a mock toast. I'm just saying you had to work harder than most. Had to prove yourself more. Must be exhausting, right? Having to be twice as good just to be seen as half as competent? Someone laughed nervously near the bar. The sound died quickly, swallowed by uncomfortable silence. Madeline's fingers tightened on her armrest, but her face remained perfectly composed. I find competence speaks for itself, Marcus. Results don't need a wheelchair to be measured. True. Marcus nodded, swirling his scotch. But presentation matters in our world. Image, you know that. And the reality is, some people see the chair before they see the CEO. Unfair? Absolutely. But fair doesn't close billion-dollar deals. The janitor had stopped mopping. Madeline noticed him from the corner of her eye, standing completely still now, his hands loose at his sides. His face was turned away, but his body language had changed, tense, alert. I appreciate your concern for my public image, Madeline said, her voice cooling to ice. But I think the Takahashi board judged me on merit, not mobility. Did they, though? Marcus leaned down, bringing his face level with hers. Or did they pity you? Poor brave girl in her wheelchair fighting so hard. Makes for a good story, doesn't it? Very inspirational. The room was silent now, completely, utterly silent. 20 executives, 2 senators, and a tech billionaire, all holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Madeline felt heat rising in her chest, crawling up her throat. She'd faced this before, the condescension dressed as concern, the casual cruelty wrapped in compliments. But never like this, never so public, never with an audience that could make or break her career watching from the sidelines. I think, she said quietly, dangerously, that you've had too much to drink, Marcus. Have I? He straightened up, spreading his arms wide, addressing the room now instead of her. Or have I just had enough to say what everyone's thinking? Come on, folks, we're all adults here. We can be honest, can't we? No one spoke. No one moved. This is a business, Marcus continued, his voice rising with the confidence of a man who'd never faced consequences. And in business, we need leaders who can stand up, literally stand up, when things get tough. Leaders who can walk into a room and command it. Leaders who don't need... He gestured vaguely at Madeline's wheelchair. Accommodations. Madeline's breath came short and sharp. The edges of her vision darkened. She'd learned to control her emotions, learned to lock them behind professional walls, but this was a direct assault on everything she'd built, everything she'd fought for, and it was happening in front of everyone who mattered in her world. Marcus. Rachel stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. This is completely inappropriate. Is it? Marcus turned to her with a smile that never reached his eyes. I'm just being practical, sweetheart. This industry is brutal. It requires strength, real strength, not inspirational poster strength. And I'm sorry, but when I look at our CEO, he turned back to Madeline and his smile sharpened into something cruel. I see someone who can't even stand on her own 2 feet. The words landed like physical blows. Madeline felt her composure crack, felt the walls she'd built starting to crumble. Her hands trembled on the armrests, her throat closed. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice screamed at her to respond, to fight back, to destroy him with words the way he was destroying her. But the words wouldn't come. The humiliation was too complete, too public, too absolute. And then Marcus reached out, His hand moved toward her shoulder in a gesture that might have been conciliatory if it weren't for the smirk on his face, the mockery in his eyes. He was going to pat her shoulder. He was going to touch her. He was going to complete this public humiliation with a gesture of false sympathy that would reduce her to a child being comforted after a tantrum. Madeline flinched. She couldn't help it. Her body moved before her mind could stop it, pulling away from his hand, from his presence, from the weight of his contempt. That was when the janitor moved. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply stepped forward, placing himself between Marcus and Madeline with the kind of quiet efficiency that suggested he'd done this sort of thing before. One moment he was invisible against the wall. The next he was there, solid as stone, his mop forgotten on the floor behind him. "Sir," the janitor said quietly, "I think you should step back." The room froze. Marcus stared at the janitor like he'd just been addressed by a piece of furniture. "Excuse me?" "Step back," the janitor repeated. His voice was calm, level, without threat or aggression, just a statement of fact. "Please." "Do you know who I am?" Marcus's voice climbed an octave, disbelief and rage mixing into something toxic. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" "Yes, sir." The janitor didn't move, didn't blink. "You're a man who's had too much to drink and is making a fool of himself. I'm asking politely for you to step back and let Miss Cross have some space." Madeline's heart hammered against her ribs. She opened her mouth to tell the janitor to stop, to leave it alone, that getting involved would only cost him his job and wouldn't change anything. But the words caught in her throat because something in his stance, the way he held himself, the absolute certainty in his posture, told her this wasn't a man who could be intimidated. Marcus's face went purple. "Security!" he bellowed. "Security! Get this man out of here!" Two guards appeared from near the entrance, both wearing the crisp suits and earpieces of professional corporate security. They moved toward the janitor with the practiced confidence of men who'd handled hundreds of these situations before. "Sir," the taller guard said, reaching for the janitor's arm, "you need to come with us." The janitor didn't resist. He simply shifted his weight slightly, a movement so subtle it was almost imperceptible. The guard's hand missed its target. Before anyone could process what had happened, the janitor had turned, his hand coming up in a controlled arc that caught the guard's wrist and redirected it away from his body. The movement was pure muscle memory, executed with the kind of precision that came from years of training. The guard stumbled backward, more surprised than hurt. His partner moved in immediately, reaching for something at his belt. Pepper spray or a radio, Madeline couldn't tell. But the janitor was already there, closing the distance, his other hand coming up to intercept. There was a brief moment of controlled chaos, bodies moving too fast to follow, and then both guards were on the floor, unhurt but thoroughly disarmed, staring up at the janitor with expressions of complete shock. The janitor stood over them, breathing evenly, his hands relaxed at his sides. He'd moved them aside the way someone might move furniture, efficiently, carefully, without malice. The room erupted. "Oh my God! Did you see?" "Call the police." "Who is this guy?" The janitor ignored them all. He turned back to Marcus, who'd gone pale, his bravado evaporating like morning mist. "Sir," the janitor said again, his voice still calm, "I'm going to ask one more time. Please step back from Ms. Cross." "You're insane," Marcus whispered. "You're absolutely insane. Do you know what you've just done?" "Yes, sir." The janitor's expression didn't change. "My job." "Your job?" Marcus laughed, a high, brittle sound. "Your job is mopping floors, you idiot, not assaulting security guards." "I didn't assault anyone." The janitor gestured to the two guards, who were climbing to their feet, looking embarrassed and confused. "I just asked them to give us some space. They agreed." One of the guards opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? The janitor was right. They weren't hurt. They'd been moved aside, nothing more. But Marcus wasn't done. He grabbed his phone from his pocket, his hands shaking with rage. "I'm calling the real police. The NYPD. You're going to jail for this. You're going to, Marcus." A new voice cut through the chaos, sharp and authoritative. "Put the phone down." Everyone turned. An older man stood near the entrance, wearing an impeccably tailored suit and the kind of bearing that suggested military service. Madeline recognized him immediately. General Raymond Foster, retired Marine Corps, now serving on the board of 3 Fortune 500 companies. She'd met him twice before, brief handshakes at charity events, but she'd never heard him speak with such command. The general walked forward, his eyes locked on the janitor. The crowd parted before him like water. When he reached the center of the room, he stopped, studying the janitor's face with an intensity that made everyone else fade into background noise. "Sergeant Hart," the general said quietly. "Is that you?" The janitor Hart went very still, went. For the first time since he'd stepped forward, something flickered across his face. Surprise, recognition, and then resignation. "General Foster," Hart said. "Sir?" "I'll be damned." The general's stern expression cracked into something that might have been a smile. "Caleb Hart. Last time I saw you, you were pulling a pilot out of a burning helicopter in Kandahar. That was what, 8 years ago?" The room had gone silent again, but this was a different kind of silence. Curious, confused, everyone was trying to process what they were hearing. "9 years, sir," Hart said, "and I wasn't alone. There were 3 of us in that extraction." "3 of you went in," the general agreed. 2 of you came out. You carried Lieutenant Reeves through a firefight with a broken leg and thermal burns over 20% of your body. I gave you the Silver Star myself." Phones came out. Madeline heard the soft clicks of camera shutters, saw the glow of screens as people frantically searched Caleb Hart Silver Star, and watched their expressions change as results loaded. Marcus stood frozen, his phone still in his hand, his face cycling through emotions too fast to name. This is the janitor," he said weakly. "He's the janitor." "He's Sergeant Caleb Hart," General Foster corrected, steel returning to his voice. "One of the finest combat rescue specialists I ever had the privilege of commanding. He saved 17 lives in 4 tours, 17 American service members who went home to their families because this man refused to leave anyone behind." Hart's jaw tightened. "General, with respect, that was a long time ago. I'm not that person anymore." "Aren't you?" The general gestured around the room. "Because from where I'm standing, you just stepped in to protect someone who needed protecting. Looks like the same man to me." Madeline's head was spinning. She looked at Hart. Caleb really looked at him for the first time. The controlled movements, the calm under pressure, the way he'd disarmed 2 security guards without breaking a sweat. It all made sense now. But it didn't answer the most important question. "Why?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you working as a janitor?" Caleb turned to her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his expression. Vulnerability, maybe, or pain. "Because, Ms. Cross, when you leave the military, the world doesn't exactly throw you a parade. You come home, you try to figure out who you are when you're not following orders, and you do what you have to do to take care of what matters." "And what matters?" Madeline asked. Before Caleb could answer, a door banged open across the room. A little girl burst through, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing pajamas with cartoon stars and carrying a worn stuffed elephant. She looked around wildly until her eyes found Caleb. "Daddy!" she shouted, running toward him. "Daddy, you forgot your lunchbox at home, and Aunt Maria said I should bring it because you always forget to eat when you work late. And..." She skidded to a stop, finally noticing the crowd, the tension, the cameras pointed in her direction. Her eyes went wide. Caleb moved immediately, dropping to one knee and pulling her into his arms. "Hey, Lilybug," he said softly. "What are you doing here?" "Bringing your lunch." She held up a battered lunchbox with superhero stickers peeling off the sides. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby, you did perfect." He kissed the top of her head, then looked up at the crowd, and Madeline saw something fierce and protective flash across his face. "Everyone, this is my daughter Lily. Lily, these are people Daddy works with." The little girl waved shyly, clutching her elephant. "Hi." Madeline felt something break open in her chest. Here was the answer to her question. Here was what mattered, not medals or glory or recognition. A child in pajamas carrying a lunchbox for her father who worked nights so he could be there during her days. A man who'd sacrificed everything, career, identity, respect, to be a parent. "Miss Cross?" Rachel appeared at her side again, her voice low and urgent. The board members are starting to leave. People are asking questions. What do you want me to tell them? What did she want them to say? Madeline looked around the room, at Marcus, still pale and silent, at the security guards looking lost, at the executives who'd stood by and watched her humiliation without lifting a finger, at General Foster standing at attention like he was back on a parade ground, and at Caleb kneeling on the marble floor with his daughter in his arms, looking like the only real person in a room full of holograms. She took a breath, then another, and then Madeline Cross, CEO of Meridian Global, confined to a wheelchair but bound by nothing, found her voice. Tell them, she said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear, that the celebration is over. Tell them I'll be conducting a full review of everyone who witnessed tonight's events. Tell them that anyone who stood by and watched me be humiliated without intervening should start updating their resumes. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus's head snapped up. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. Madeline rolled her chair forward, and the crowd parted before her the way they'd parted for the general. She stopped in front of Marcus, looking up at him with eyes that had gone cold as winter steel. You called me weak, Marcus, said I couldn't stand up for myself, but standing up isn't about legs. It's about courage. And the only person who showed any courage in this room tonight was the man you tried to have arrested. She turned to Caleb, who was standing now, his daughter's hand clasped in his. Mr. Hart, she said, I owe you an apology. You shouldn't have had to step in. Someone in this room should have spoken up sooner. You don't owe me anything, Ms. Cross, Caleb said quietly. I just did what felt right. And that, Madeline said, turning back to the crowd, is more than I can say for any of you. The silence that followed was absolute. Then someone started clapping. Madeline looked over and saw Rachel, her assistant, applauding slowly, steadily, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Another person joined in, then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding, and people were pulling out phones again, but this time to record Madeline, not Caleb. Marcus Verne stood in the center of it all, isolated, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. This isn't over, he said to Madeline. You think you can humiliate me? Do you have any idea how much power I have in this city? I can destroy you. I can destroy this entire company. You can try, Madeline said. But right now, Mr. Verne, I'd like you to leave my building. Security? She looked at the two guards who were still hovering uncertainly. Please escort Mr. Verne out. If he refuses to go, call the actual police. The guards looked at each other, then at Marcus. Whatever authority he'd held over them had evaporated. They moved to either side of him, not touching him, but making their intent clear. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head. You'll regret this, he said. All of you will regret this. He walked toward the exit, the guards flanking him. Everyone watched him go. No one tried to stop him. No one said goodbye. When the door closed behind him, the room let out a collective breath. Madeline turned back to Caleb, who was whispering something to his daughter. Lily nodded, still clutching her elephant, looking around the room with wide eyes. Mr. Hart, Madeline said. Could I speak with you privately? Just for a moment? Caleb looked down at Lily, then back at Madeline. If it's about my job, Miss Cross, I understand. I can clean out my locker tonight. I know I overstepped. You didn't, Madeline interrupted, but I'd still like to talk, if that's okay. He hesitated, then nodded. Lily, can you sit with Miss Rachel for a minute? I need to talk to the lady in the wheelchair. That's Ms. Cross, Lily said seriously. Daddy, you should use her name. It's more polite. Despite everything, Madeline found herself smiling. He's right, though. I am the lady in the wheelchair, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly. Okay, but you're also Ms. Cross. You can be both. I can be both, Madeline agreed. Thank you for reminding me. Rachel came over and offered her hand to Lily. Want to see the break room? They have really good cookies. Lily looked up at Caleb, who nodded. Go ahead, Bug. I'll be right there. The little girl took Rachel's hand and walked away, chattering about her stuffed elephant. Caleb watched her go, and Madeline saw the love in his expression, fierce and protective and absolute. When they were alone, or as alone as they could be in a room still full of people pretending not to eavesdrop, Madeline rolled her chair closer to Caleb. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his hair at the temples, the old scar on his left hand. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked. "About your service. About what you did." Caleb shrugged. "Didn't seem relevant. I mop floors, I take out trash. Nobody needs to know I used to do other things." "But you saved lives. You were a hero." "I was a soldier," he corrected gently. "And soldiers come home. Some of us come home broken. Some of us come home different. I came home with a daughter who needed a father more than the world needed another hero." Madeline studied him carefully. "What happened to her mother?" Something dark flickered across Caleb's face. "She left 3 months after I got back. Said she'd married a soldier, not a janitor. Said I'd changed, that I wasn't the man she fell in love with." He paused. "She was right. I wasn't." "I'm sorry," Madeline said quietly. "Don't be. I got Lily out of it. Best thing that ever happened to me." He looked at Madeline directly, and she saw steel beneath his kindness. "Miss Cross, I appreciate what you did tonight, standing up to Vern. That took courage. But I need you to understand something. I didn't step in because I wanted recognition or reward. I stepped in because what he was doing was wrong, and someone needed to say so." "I understand that," Madeline said. "But you also need to understand something. I've spent 2 years in this chair building this company, proving myself over and over to people who see the wheelchair before they see me. Tonight, for the first time, someone defended me, not because they pitied me, but because it was right. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "What happens now?" he finally asked. "Now?" Madeline smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Now I clean house, starting with everyone who stood by and watched Marcus humiliate me. Then I rebuild, different, better." "Sounds like a plan," Caleb said. "I should get Lily home, school tomorrow." "Mr. Hart," Madeline said as he turned to go, "I'd like to offer you a different position. Head of security, better hours, better pay. You'd be protecting people, not just cleaning up after them." Caleb stopped. "Ms. Cross, I appreciate the offer, but I like my job. I'm good at it, and the hours work for Lily." "Night shift works for a 7-year-old? Better than being gone during the day when she needs me." He looked back at Madeline, and she saw the calculation in his eyes, the careful balance he had built his life around. "I made a choice when I left the service. I chose my daughter over my career. I chose being present over being important. I don't regret that choice." "What if you didn't have to choose?" Madeline asked. "What if you could do both?" "There's always a choice, Ms. Cross. You of all people should know that." He was right. She did know that. Every day she chose to roll into a boardroom where half the people didn't think she belonged. She chose to fight when it would have been easier to accept limits others tried to impose. She chose courage over comfort, even when it cost her everything. "Think about it," she said. "That's all I ask." Caleb nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." He started to walk away again, then paused. "Son, Cross? What that man said about you tonight, he was wrong. About all of it. You're not weak, you're not broken, and anyone who thinks a wheelchair makes you less than what you are is too blind to deserve your time." Before Madeline could respond, he was gone, heading toward the break room to collect his daughter, leaving her alone in a room that had emptied without her noticing. The celebration was over. The victory felt hollow, but something new had begun, something Madeline couldn't quite name yet. General Foster appeared at her side, his hands clasped behind his back. "That was well done, Ms. Cross." "Was it?" Madeline looked up at him. "I just fired half my board and chased away my biggest investor." "No," the general corrected. "You showed them that integrity matters more than money. That's leadership." "Leadership?" Madeline laughed, the sound bitter. "I couldn't even defend myself until someone else stepped in." "That's not what I saw." General Foster's voice was firm but kind. "I saw someone who'd been fighting alone for so long that she forgot others could fight alongside her. Hart reminded you. That's not weakness. That's wisdom, knowing when to accept help." Madeline looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly on the armrests. "I hate this chair," she whispered. "I hate that people see it before they see me. I hate that I have to prove myself every single day just to be treated like everyone else." "I know," the general said. "But here's what Hart taught me in Kandahar. Strength isn't about standing up. It's about refusing to stay down. You've never stayed down, Ms. Cross. Not once. That's why you're still here." He saluted, a sharp, precise movement that felt out of place in a corporate boardroom but somehow exactly right, and walked away, leaving Madeline alone with her thoughts and the ruins of her celebration. She sat there for a long time, listening to the muted sounds of the city 42 floors below. Somewhere in this building, Caleb Hart was walking his daughter home through midnight streets, carrying a lunchbox with peeling superhero stickers and holding the hand of a little girl who saw him as her whole world. He'd chosen that. Chosen love over glory, presence over importance, being a father over being a hero. And tonight, when no one else had the courage to speak up, he'd shown more strength than everyone in this room combined. Madeline closed her eyes and let herself feel it, all of it. The humiliation, the rage, the shame, the gratitude, the hope. She let it wash over her and through her, and then she let it go. Tomorrow, she would start rebuilding. Tomorrow, she would show the world what real leadership looked like. Tomorrow, she would prove that power wasn't about who could stand the tallest, but about who refused to kneel. But tonight, in this empty boardroom with champagne flutes scattered across marble tables and the echo of laughter still hanging in the air, Madeline Cross finally understood something important. She'd been fighting the wrong battle. She'd been trying to prove she was as good as everyone else despite her wheelchair. But that was the trap. That was accepting their premise, that being in a wheelchair made her less. What she needed to prove wasn't that she was as good despite the chair. It was that the chair was irrelevant to the question of who she was and what she could do. The chair was just a tool, like a laptop or a phone. It didn't define her any more than Marcus Verne's expensive suit defined him. And the man who taught her that lesson wasn't a CEO or an investor or a board member. He was a janitor with a silver star in a box somewhere, a daughter who needed him, and the kind of quiet courage that didn't need an audience to exist. Madeline rolled toward the windows, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere down there, Caleb Hart was reading bedtime stories and packing lunches and being exactly who he needed to be. Tomorrow, she would find him again. Tomorrow, she would figure out how to build a company that valued people like him, people who understood that strength came in many forms, that heroism was often quiet, and that the measure of a person had nothing to do with whether they could stand on two legs. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of simple human gratitude. A stranger had defended her when no one else would. That mattered. That changed things. That made tomorrow possible. Rachel appeared in the doorway, holding her coat. "Car's waiting downstairs whenever you're ready." "Thank you, Rachel." Madeline took one last look at the empty room. "And thank you for standing up tonight. You were the first. That took courage." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I should have been faster. I should have—" "You did exactly what you needed to do," Madeline interrupted gently. "We all did what we could. Tomorrow, we do better." They left together, two women navigating an empty boardroom that had witnessed both the worst and the best of human nature in the span of an hour. Behind them, the lights of Manhattan glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in towers of steel and glass. But somewhere in those lights, a little girl was falling asleep knowing her father was a hero. And in the morning, when Caleb Hart showed up for his shift, he'd find an envelope taped to his locker, not a job offer, not a reward, but a simple thank you note written in Madeline Cross's precise handwriting. The note was still in Caleb's hand when Lily tugged on his sleeve the next morning, her backpack already strapped to her shoulders, her hair pulled into the lopsided ponytail she insisted on doing herself. "Daddy, we're going to be late," she said, bouncing on her toes. "Mrs. Chen said if we're late again, I have to miss recess." Caleb folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket, next to the worn photograph he carried everywhere. Lily, at 3 years old, covered in birthday cake, laughing so hard her eyes had disappeared into crescents of joy. "We won't be late, Bug. I promise." They walked through the pre-dawn streets of Queens, past bodegas just rolling up their gates and bakeries pumping the smell of fresh bread into the cold air. Lily chattered about a science project on butterflies, about how her friend Emma had gotten a new bike, about 1,000 small things that made up her world. Caleb listened to every word, filing them away like treasures. These morning walks were his favorite part of the day. Just him and his daughter, the city waking up around them, nothing between them but conversation and companionship. "Daddy?" Lily looked up at him, her brown eyes serious. "Who was that lady last night? The one in the wheelchair?" Caleb had been expecting this question. Lily was sharp, observant in ways that sometimes caught him off guard. "Her name is Ms. Cross. She runs the company where I work." "She seemed sad," Lily said. "That man was being mean to her." "Yeah, he was." "But you stopped him." There was pride in Lily's voice, and something else, curiosity, maybe, or concern. "Were you scared?" Caleb considered lying, giving her the easy answer, but he'd promised himself when her mother left that he'd never lie to his daughter about things that mattered. "A little bit," he admitted. "But sometimes you have to do the right thing even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. Like when I stood up to Tommy Martinez when he was picking on Emma?" "Exactly like that." Caleb squeezed her hand. "I was really proud of you that day, you know." Mrs. Chen said I should have told a teacher instead of yelling at him. Lily kicked a loose stone, watching it skitter across the sidewalk. "But all the teachers were inside and Emma was crying, and I didn't want to wait." "Sometimes," Caleb said carefully, "the rules say to wait for someone in charge. But sometimes waiting means someone gets hurt. You have to use your judgment. That's what being brave means. Not following rules blindly, but thinking about what's right." They reached PS 112, a squat brick building surrounded by a chain-link fence and a playground that had seen better days. Other kids were arriving, bundled in winter coats, calling out to friends. Caleb walked Lily to the entrance where Mrs. Chen stood greeting students with the kind of forced cheerfulness that suggested she hadn't had enough coffee yet. "Mr. Hart," Mrs. Chen said, her smile warming when she saw them. "And Miss Lily, right on time today." "Told you, Daddy," Lily said triumphantly. She hugged Caleb around the waist, squeezing tight. "Love you. Don't forget to eat your lunch." "Love you too, Bug. Learned something amazing today." He watched her disappear into the building, backpack bouncing, already absorbed in conversation with another girl. Only when the door closed behind her did Caleb let himself feel the weight of exhaustion settling into his bones. He'd been up since 3 yesterday afternoon, worked a full shift, dealt with the confrontation at Meridian Tower, gotten Lily home and settled, then managed maybe 3 hours of sleep before her alarm went off. His phone buzzed. Caleb pulled it out, expecting a message from his sister Maria, who watched Lily after school. Instead, he found a text from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Hart, this is Rachel Torres, Ms. Cross's assistant. Would you be available to meet with Ms. Cross this afternoon at 2 p.m.? Please respond to confirm. Thank you." Caleb stared at the message, Madeline's note heavy in his pocket. He'd told her he'd think about her offer, but he'd meant it as a polite way of saying no. His life worked the way it was. Changing it meant risk, and risk meant potentially disrupting the careful balance he'd built for Lily. But he'd also learned in the military that running from hard conversations never made them easier. He typed a quick response confirming the meeting, then headed for the subway. He had 6 hours before he needed to be at Meridian Tower. 6 hours to sleep, shower, maybe figure out what he was going to say when Madeline Cross asked him again to be someone he'd stopped being a long time ago. The apartment was quiet when he got home. Maria wouldn't be there until after school to pick up Lily. Caleb moved through the small space. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where everything worked but nothing matched, with the automatic efficiency of someone who'd learned to live light. He'd lived in smaller places. Tents in the desert. Barracks that smelled like sweat and gun oil. A hospital room where every breath felt like fire. This was home. Small, maybe, but theirs. He lay down on his bed without bothering to undress, intending to rest his eyes for just a moment. Instead, he fell into the kind of dreamless sleep that was either mercy or warning, and when he woke it was to his phone alarm screaming and sunlight slanting through the window at an angle that meant he'd slept longer than planned. 1:30. He had 30 minutes to get to Midtown. Caleb showered in 4 minutes flat, a skill the Army had taught him, and civilian life hadn't diminished. He dressed in the only nice clothes he owned, khakis and a button-down shirt he saved for parent-teacher conferences, and caught the N train with 2 minutes to spare. The subway was packed with the afternoon crowd, tourists and business people and everyone in between, all of them living lives that never intersected with his, except in moments like this, pressed together in a metal tube hurtling through darkness. He thought about Madeline Cross, confined to her wheelchair in a room full of people who should have defended her and didn't. He thought about Marcus Verne, drunk on power and alcohol, wielding cruelty like a weapon because he could. He thought about General Foster, recognizing him after 9 years, pulling up a past Caleb had been trying to bury under routine and responsibility. And he thought about Lily, asking him if he'd been scared. The truth was, he'd been terrified, not of the security guards or the consequences or even losing his job. He'd been terrified of being seen, of having people look at him and see not the janitor who kept his head down and his daughter fed, but the soldier he used to be. That person was gone. That person had left pieces of himself in deserts and mountains and hospital beds. The person who came home was different, quieter, smaller, someone who understood that heroism was a luxury you couldn't afford when you had a 7-year-old depending on you. But last night, watching Verne humiliate Madeline, Caleb had felt something crack open inside him. Rage, maybe, or recognition. Because he knew what it was like to be dismissed, to have people see what you couldn't do instead of what you could. And in that moment, keeping his head down had felt like cowardice. The train jerked to a stop. Caleb pushed through the crowd and climbed stairs back into daylight. Meridian Tower rose above him, all glass and steel and corporate confidence. He'd been coming here 5 nights a week for 2 years, always through the service entrance, always invisible. Walking through the front door felt like trespassing. The lobby was cathedral-sized, with marble floors that echoed every footstep, and abstract art that probably cost more than Caleb made in 5 years. The security desk sat in the center like an altar, staffed by guards in crisp uniforms who looked up as he approached. "I'm here to see Ms. Cross," Caleb said. "Caleb Hart. I have a 2 o'clock appointment." The guard checked his computer, eyebrows rising slightly. "ID, please, Mr. Hart." Caleb handed over his driver's license. The guard studied it, studied Caleb, then nodded slowly. "You're the janitor." It wasn't a question, but Caleb answered anyway. "Yes, the one from last night." The guard's expression shifted into something between respect and curiosity. "That video's all over the internet. You're kind of famous." "I'm really not." Caleb accepted his ID back. "Can you direct me to Ms. Cross's office?" 42nd floor. Rachel Torres will meet you at the elevator." The guard hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, what you did last night, that took guts. A lot of people here are glad somebody finally stood up to Verne." Caleb didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and headed for the elevators. The ride up was smooth and fast, the kind of engineering that costs millions to perfect. When the doors opened on 42, Rachel was waiting, looking tired but professional in a navy suit. "Mr. Hart," she said, offering her hand. "Thank you for coming." "Ms. Torres." Her grip was firm, no nonsense. He liked that. "How's Ms. Cross doing?" "Honestly, she didn't sleep last night. She's been on calls since 6 this morning dealing with fallout from the board meeting." Rachel started walking, and Caleb fell into step beside her. "Marcus Verne is threatening legal action. 3 board members resigned. The press is having a field day. It's a mess." "I'm sorry," Caleb said. "I didn't mean to make things harder for her." Rachel stopped, turning to face him directly. "Mr. Hart, you're the only person who made things better. Everyone else, myself included, we froze. We let her face that alone. You didn't." She paused. "Don't apologize for doing the right thing when everyone else did nothing." They continued down a hallway lined with photos of Meridian's history, groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, executives shaking hands with politicians. Caleb recognized Madeline in several of them, always at the edge of the frame, always in her wheelchair, always with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Rachel knocked on a door at the end of the hall, then opened it without waiting for a response. Ms. Cross, Mr. Hart is here. Thank you, Rachel. Hold my calls, please. The office was smaller than Caleb expected, more workspace than showroom. A massive desk dominated one side, covered in papers and multiple computer monitors. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that made Caleb slightly dizzy. And in the center of it all sat Madeline Cross, looking exhausted and determined in equal measure. Mr. Hart, she said, rolling her chair out from behind the desk. Thank you for coming. Please, sit. Caleb took one of the chairs facing her, acutely aware of how expensive it probably was. Ms. Cross, I got your note. You didn't have to thank me. Yes, I did. Madeline folded her hands in her lap, and Caleb noticed they were shaking slightly. What happened last night, what you did, it matters, more than you know. I just spoke up when someone needed help, Caleb said. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. Madeline's voice was sharp, cutting. 20 people in that room, and you were the only one who said something. The only one who stepped forward. Do you understand how rare that is? Caleb didn't answer. He'd learned in the military that sometimes silence said more than words. Madeline studied him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. I want to show you something, she said, turning her wheelchair toward one of the monitors. This is the video from last night. It's been viewed 2 million times since midnight. She clicked play, and Caleb watched himself step forward, watched the confrontation unfold from a security camera angle. The comments scrolled past on the side, thousands of them, opinions and reactions and arguments. Some praised him, some called him violent. Some focused on Madeline, debating whether she needed defending or whether his intervention was patronizing. Turn it off, Caleb said quietly. Please. Madeline paused the video. Why? Because that's not who I am anymore. That person, the one who steps forward, who gets involved, that's someone I used to be. I'm a father now. I can't afford to be that person. Can't? Madeline wheeled closer. Or won't? Does it matter? Caleb met her eyes. Ms. Cross, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I appreciate the job offer, but I have a daughter who needs stability, a routine. I work nights so I can be there during the day. I walk her to school, I pack her lunches, I help with her homework. That's my life, that's what matters. And last night, Madeline asked, when you stepped forward, when you protected me, that didn't matter. Of course it mattered, Caleb's voice roughened. But it was one moment, one choice. It doesn't change who I am or what my responsibilities are. What if I told you, Madeline said slowly, that you could do both? That you could be there for your daughter and still be the person you were last night? I'd say you don't understand how the world works for people like me. Caleb stood, suddenly feeling trapped in the expensive office with its expensive furniture and its view of a city that belonged to people like Madeline, not people like him. Ms. Cross, I'm a janitor. I make $16 an hour. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens with my daughter and sometimes my sister when she needs a place to crash. I don't have savings. I don't have a safety net. If I lose my job, if I take a risk that doesn't work out, I'm not the only one who pays the price. Lily pays it too, and I won't do that to her. What if you didn't have to risk anything? Madeline's voice was steady, certain. What if I guaranteed your current salary, benefits, and schedule while you transition to a new position? What if I made sure you could still be there for Lily exactly the way you are now? Caleb turned back to her. Why? Why does this matter so much to you? Because you're right, Madeline said. About everything. The world doesn't work for people like you. It doesn't work for people like me either. But maybe, just maybe, we can change that. Not by ourselves, but together. I'm not a hero, Ms. Cross. I'm just trying to survive. So am I. Madeline's hands tightened on her armrests. Do you know what it's like to walk into a room, roll into a room, and watch people's expressions change when they see the wheelchair? To spend every single day proving you're competent, capable, worthy of respect? To have men like Marcus Verne treat you like a child or an inspiration or a problem to be solved? No, Caleb admitted. But I know what it's like to be invisible. To have people look through you like you don't exist. To know that your value is measured by what you can do for others, not who you are? Then you understand. Madeline rolled closer, and Caleb saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she carried. I need someone I can trust. Someone who will tell me the truth even when it's hard. Someone who won't see the wheelchair or the title or the power, just the person. Can you be that person, Mr. Hart? Caleb thought about Lily, asking him if he'd been scared. He thought about General Foster saying strength wasn't about standing up, but about refusing to stay down. He thought about the note in his pocket and the words Madeline had written. Thank you for reminding me what courage looks like. What exactly are you offering? He asked. Madeline's shoulders relaxed slightly, the first crack in her armor. Head of security, but not traditional security. I want you to help me rebuild this company's culture, to create an environment where people feel safe speaking up, where integrity matters more than hierarchy. I want you to teach others what you showed me last night, that protecting people is more important than protecting comfort. That's not a security job, Caleb said. That's a revolution. Maybe, Madeline smiled, tired but genuine. But revolutions need soldiers. They need people who know how to fight for something bigger than themselves. You've done that before. You could do it again. I told you, I'm not that person anymore. Aren't you? Madeline gestured toward the frozen video on her screen. Because that looks like the same person to me. The details are different. The uniform changed, but the core, the thing that makes you step forward when everyone else steps back, that's still there. Caleb was quiet for a long time, wrestling with truth and fear and the terrible weight of choice. Finally, he said, I need to think about it. Talk to my daughter. This isn't just my decision. I understand. Madeline handed him a folder. This is the full offer. Salary, benefits, schedule, everything. Take it home. Read it. Talk to Lily. Take all the time you need. She paused. But Mr. Hart, one thing you should know. Whether you accept this position or not, your job as a janitor is secure. I'm not trying to force you into anything. I'm just asking you to consider being more than you are. More than I am? Caleb looked down at the folder in his hands. Miss Cross, I'm exactly who I need to be. A father, that's enough. Of course it is. Madeline's voice softened. But what if you could show your daughter that being a father and being someone who fights for what's right aren't mutually exclusive? What if you could teach her that making a difference doesn't mean abandoning the people you love? The words hit Caleb like a physical blow because they touched the fear he'd been carrying since the moment his ex-wife walked out. That choosing Lily meant giving up everything else. That being a good father meant making himself smaller, quieter, less. That love required sacrifice of self. But what if it didn't? What if love could expand instead of contract? What if showing Lily how to be brave was more important than keeping her safe from every risk? I'll read it, Caleb said finally. That's all I can promise. That's all I'm asking. Madeline rolled back slightly, creating space. Thank you for coming, Mr. Hart. And thank you again for last night. You gave me something I'd lost. Hope? Maybe. Or just a reminder that decent people still exist. Caleb nodded and turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Ms. Cross? That thing Verne said about you needing to stand on your own 2 feet? Yes? He was wrong. Not because you don't need legs to lead, but because leadership isn't about standing. It's about knowing when to ask for help and when to offer it. You did both last night. That's strength. He left before she could respond, walking through the hallways of Meridian Tower with Madeline's offer burning against his chest. Rachel was waiting by the elevators, her expression carefully neutral. How'd it go? She asked. I don't know, Caleb admitted. She offered me a job, or maybe a mission. I'm not sure there's a difference. There isn't, Rachel said. Not with Ms. Cross. She doesn't hire employees, she recruits believers. The elevator arrived, doors sliding open. For what it's worth, I hope you say yes. We could use someone like you around here. Someone like me? Someone who isn't afraid of powerful people doing terrible things. Rachel's smile was sad. That's rarer than you'd think. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. Caleb watched the numbers descend, each floor a marker of distance between who he was and who Madeline wanted him to be. When he emerged into the lobby, the same guard from earlier looked up and gave him a small nod of recognition. Not respect exactly, something quieter. Acknowledgement, maybe. Caleb walked out into the afternoon sunshine and headed for the subway, but his feet carried him past the station entrance, down streets he'd walked 1,000 times without really seeing them. He ended up in a small park near PS 112, sitting on a bench worn smooth by years of use, watching kids play on equipment that looked like it had been installed when he was their age. He pulled out the folder Madeline had given him and opened it. The numbers made his breath catch. The salary was more than triple what he made now. The benefits included health care that would actually cover Lily's asthma medication without him having to choose between prescriptions and groceries. The schedule was flexible, designed, the document said, to accommodate his responsibilities as a single parent. But it was the final page that stopped him cold. Under position description, someone had written in handwriting he recognized from the thank you note, "This role is not about protecting buildings or assets. It's about protecting people, about creating an environment where dignity is guaranteed, where speaking up is encouraged, where the measure of a person has nothing to do with their perceived limitations. If you accept this position, you'll be asked to challenge a system that values comfort over courage. You'll be asked to stand up when others sit down. You'll be asked to be exactly who you were the night we met. No more, no less. The question isn't whether you're capable of this work. You've already proven you are. The question is whether you're willing to show your daughter that being a hero isn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It's about choosing every single day to do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Caleb read the words 3 times, each time feeling something shift inside him. Madeline Cross saw him, not the janitor, not the former soldier, not the single father struggling to keep his head above water. She saw the person beneath all those labels, the one who'd stepped forward when everyone else stayed still. His phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Picked up Lily from school. She wants to know if you're coming to her butterfly presentation tomorrow afternoon. I told her you have to work, but she's insistent. Call me." Caleb stared at the message, then at the folder in his hands, then at the kids playing in the park. One of them had fallen, scraped her knee on the concrete. She sat there crying while other kids ran past, absorbed in their own games. Then a boy stopped, walked back, and offered his hand. The girl took it, and he pulled her up. Simple, instinctive, the kind of kindness that didn't need an audience. That was what Madeline was asking for. Not heroism, just basic human decency, scaled up and systematized. A company where people helped each other up instead of running past, where speaking up was rewarded instead of punished, where being different wasn't a liability but a strength. Could he do that? Could he be the person who helped others up while still being the father who showed up for butterfly presentations? His phone rang. Maria's number. Caleb answered. "Hey. Hey yourself." His sister's voice was warm, familiar. "So Lily's driving me crazy about this presentation. She made this whole poster about metamorphosis, and she wants you to see it. I know you work tomorrow afternoon, but I'll be there," Caleb said, making the decision even as the words left his mouth. "Tell her I'll be there." "Really? What about your shift?" "I'm going to talk to my supervisor, see if I can move some things around." He looked down at the folder again. "Or maybe change shifts entirely." "Change shifts?" Maria's voice sharpened with curiosity. "What's going on, Caleb? You've worked nights for 2 years. You said it was the only schedule that worked." "It was. It is." Caleb struggled to find the right words. "But something happened last night. Something that's making me reconsider some things." "This about that video?" "Because I saw that. Everyone saw that. You were all over the news this morning. Hero janitor defends CEO. They're calling you the working class Captain America." Caleb groaned. "Please tell me you're joking." "Wish I was. There's a whole Twitter hashtag. People are writing articles about you. Someone started a GoFundMe to send Lily to college." Maria paused. "Cal, what happened? Really happened?" "A guy was being cruel to someone who didn't deserve it. I asked him to stop. Things escalated." Caleb rubbed his eyes, suddenly exhausted. "And now everyone wants to make it into something bigger than it was." "Maybe it is bigger," Maria said quietly. "Maybe you just don't want to see it." "See what?" "That you're good at this. at helping people, at standing up when others won't. She hesitated. You've been hiding for 2 years, Cal. Ever since Sarah left. Ever since you came home and decided being a dad meant making yourself invisible. But maybe you can be both. Maybe you can be Lily's father and still be someone who fights for what's right. The words echoed what Madeline had said, what General Foster had implied, what Caleb himself had been afraid to consider. That choosing Lily didn't mean erasing himself. That being a good father might mean showing her how to be brave instead of how to hide. The CEO offered me a job, Caleb said. Different position, better pay, more responsibility. She wants me to help change her company's culture. So take it, Maria said immediately. This is a no-brainer, Cal. Better money, better opportunities. It's not that simple. Caleb stood, pacing the length of the bench. I'd be visible. People would know me. I'd have to step up, speak out, be the person I was last night, every day. And if I fail, if I screw it up, then you fail, Maria interrupted, and you get back up and try again. That's what you taught me when Mom died and you helped me finish high school. That's what you taught Lily when she was learning to ride her bike. Why is it so hard for you to believe it applies to you too? Because when I fail, Lily pays the price. Cal, Maria's voice gentled, Lily's watching you right now, learning how to live. What do you want to teach her? That being safe means being small, or that being brave means risking everything for something that matters? Caleb didn't have an answer. He said goodbye, promised to confirm tomorrow's schedule, and hung up. The folder sat on the bench beside him, a door to a future he wasn't sure he could walk through. But maybe Madeline was right. Maybe he didn't have to walk. Maybe he just had to move forward, whatever that looked like. He picked up the folder and headed home, his mind already spinning through logistics and possibilities and fears. Tomorrow he'd talk to Lily, really talk to her, about what this might mean. Tonight he'd read through every page of Madeline's offer, looking for the catch he knew had to be there because nothing in life came without cost. But as he descended into the subway and found a seat on a train that smelled like humanity pressed too close together, Caleb felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not quite hope, not quite excitement, something quieter but more dangerous. The belief, tentative and fragile, that maybe he could be more than just a janitor trying to survive. That maybe his daughter deserved to see him try. The apartment was dark when Caleb got home, but he could hear Lily's voice drifting from her bedroom, animated and excited as she talked Maria through her butterfly presentation. He stood in the doorway for a moment, just listening, letting the ordinary magic of his daughter's enthusiasm wash over him. And then the caterpillar makes a chrysalis, not a cocoon, Aunt Maria, that's different, and inside it completely dissolves into goo before it rebuilds itself into a butterfly, Lily was saying, her words tumbling over each other in her rush to explain. Mrs. Chen said it's called metamorphosis. Isn't that the coolest word? The coolest, Maria agreed, catching sight of Caleb in the hallway. She smiled at him over Lily's head. Hey, your dad's home. Why don't you show him your poster? Lily spun around, her face lighting up. Daddy, look what I made. She thrust a poster board at him, covered in careful drawings of butterflies in various stages of development. Her handwriting, still forming, letters sometimes backward, labeled each stage in bright markers. At the bottom, she'd written in large purple letters, sometimes you have to completely change to become who you're meant to be. Caleb's throat tightened. This is amazing, Bug. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, Lily said matter-of-factly. You just finally noticed. Then she threw her arms around his waist, squeezing tight. Are you really coming tomorrow to see me present? I'll be there, Caleb promised, ruffling her hair. Front row. There is no front row, Daddy. We all sit in a circle. But she was grinning, bouncing on her toes with excitement. Emma's mom is coming and Tommy's dad and everyone's parents. I told them my dad was coming too, that you're never too busy for important stuff. The words hit harder than she could know. Caleb caught Maria's eye, saw the knowing look there. His sister had always been able to read him better than anyone. Why don't you go brush your teeth and get ready for bed? Maria suggested to Lily. Your dad and I need to talk about boring adult stuff. Is it about your job? Lily looked up at Caleb, suddenly serious. The video thing? Kids at school were talking about it. Mrs. Chen had to tell Tommy Martinez to stop showing everyone on his iPad. Caleb knelt down to her level. What were they saying? That you beat up bad guys like a superhero. Lily touched his face, her small hand cool against his cheek. But you're not a superhero. You're just my dad, right? Right, Caleb said softly. I'm just your dad. Good, she nodded firmly. I don't want you to be a superhero. They're always going away to fight bad guys and never have time for their kids. I like that you're here. She kissed his forehead, her new thing, copying what he did to her, and padded off to the bathroom. Caleb stood slowly, feeling like he'd been punched in the chest. She's scared, Maria said quietly. That you'll turn into someone else, someone who's too important to pack her lunches and walk her to school. I know. Caleb sank onto the couch, the folder from Madeline still clutched in his hand. That's what I'm afraid of too. Maria sat beside him, taking the folder and flipping through it. Her eyebrows climbed higher with each page. Cal, this is incredible. This salary. You could move out of here, get a place with a yard, save for Lily's college, actually have some breathing room. I know. So what's the problem? She turned to face him fully. And don't tell me there isn't one. I know that look. You're spiraling. Caleb leaned back, staring at the water stain on the ceiling he kept meaning to fix. What if I take this job and I fail? What if I can't do what she wants? What if I become the kind of father who's never home, who misses presentations and school plays because work is more important? What if you don't? Maria countered. What if you take this job and show Lily that you can be someone who makes a difference and still be there for her? That choosing one thing doesn't mean abandoning everything else? That's not how the world works, Maria. You know that. Is it? She gestured at the folder. Because it looks like Ms. Cross is offering you a chance to prove otherwise. Flexible schedule. Better pay. The ability to actually be present instead of exhausted all the time because you're working nights and trying to parent during the day on 3 hours of sleep. It's not just about the schedule. Caleb rubbed his face, trying to find words for the fear coiling in his gut. If I take this job, I become visible again. People know who I am. They have expectations. They want the person from that video, the one who stepped in and saved the day. But that's not who I am anymore. That person, the soldier, the hero. He died in Afghanistan when I realized I had a daughter who needed me more than the army did. He didn't die, Maria said gently. He just went dormant, like a caterpillar in a chrysalis. Sometimes you have to completely change to become who you're meant to be. She smiled, repeating Lily's words from the poster. Maybe this is your metamorphosis, Cal. Maybe you've been in the chrysalis long enough. And maybe I dissolve into goo and never rebuild myself, Caleb said. That happens too. Not every caterpillar becomes a butterfly. But you won't know unless you try. Maria stood, gathering her things. Look, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you this. Lily's watching you, learning from you. Right now, you're teaching her that being safe is more important than being brave. That protecting yourself is more important than protecting others. Is that really the lesson you want her to learn? She left before Caleb could respond, letting herself out quietly. He sat alone in the dim living room, listening to Lily brush her teeth and sing off-key to herself. The sounds of normalcy. The sounds of the life he'd built from the wreckage of the one he'd lost. But Maria's words echoed in his head, mixing with Madeline's offer and General Foster's recognition and the weight of his daughter saying she didn't want him to be a superhero because superheroes were never around. Caleb pulled out his phone and opened the video Maria had mentioned. 2 million views had climbed to 5 million. The comments were a mess of opinions and arguments, but buried in them he found threads of something else. People talking about their own experiences with workplace harassment, people in wheelchairs sharing stories of discrimination, veterans discussing the difficulty of coming home and finding purpose, and woven through it all, people saying the same thing in different ways. Thank you for showing us that someone still cares. He closed the video and opened a new text to Madeline. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard for a long time before he typed, I need to ask you something before I can make a decision. Can we talk tomorrow after my daughter's school presentation? The response came almost immediately. Of course. What time? 3:30 at PS 112 in Queens if you don't mind the trip. I want you to meet Lily. She should know who I'm considering working for. There was a longer pause this time, then, I'd be honored. See you tomorrow. Caleb set his phone down and went to check on Lily. She was already in bed, her stuffed elephant tucked under her arm, her eyes heavy but fighting sleep. "Daddy?" she mumbled as he sat on the edge of her bed. "Are you okay? You seem sad." "I'm not sad, Bug. I'm just thinking about some big decisions. About the job." She was more perceptive than he gave her credit for. "The one the lady in the wheelchair offered you? How did you know about that?" "I heard you and Aunt Maria talking." Lily sat up slightly, rubbing her eyes. "Is it a good job? Would it make you happy?" "I don't know," Caleb admitted. "It would be different. I'd be doing different work, maybe making more money so we could do more things together, but it would also mean changing a lot of what we're used to." "Would you still walk me to school?" "I'd try my best. That's important to me, Lily. Being there for you. That's the most important thing." She considered this, her young face serious in the dim light from her nightlight. "Mrs. Chen read us a story today about this bird who was afraid to fly. He stayed in the nest even when all his brothers and sisters flew away because he was scared of falling. But then one day, a storm came and knocked the nest out of the tree, and he had to fly or he'd hit the ground. And you know what happened?" "What happened?" "He flew. And it was scary at first, but then it was amazing. He saw the whole world from up high, and he realized he'd been missing everything by staying safe in the nest." Lily reached out and took Caleb's hand. "Maybe sometimes you have to risk falling to learn you can fly." Caleb felt his eyes burning. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm 7 3/4, Lily said seriously. "That's basically almost 8. I'm very mature for my age." He laughed despite himself, pulling her into a hug. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You know that?" "I know." She yawned against his shoulder. "Daddy, if you take the new job, will you teach me what you do, the helping people stuff?" "What do you mean?" "Like what you did for Ms. Cross, standing up when someone was being mean. I want to learn how to do that too, how to be brave like you." Caleb pulled back to look at her, this small person who saw him as a hero even when he felt like anything but. "You already know how, Bug. Remember when you stood up for Emma when Tommy was picking on her?" "Yeah, but I want to be better at it. I want to know how to help when things are really bad, not just when someone's being mean on the playground." Her eyes were earnest, determined. "If you take the job and learn more about protecting people, you could teach me. We could practice together." Something shifted in Caleb's chest, a tectonic plate moving after years of being locked in place. His daughter wasn't asking him to stay small for her. She was asking him to grow so she could grow with him. She wanted to learn courage, not caution. She wanted a father who showed her how to face the world, not hide from it. "Okay," he said, the word escaping before he could think too hard about it. "Okay, I'll think about it. Really think about it." "Good." Lily settled back into her pillows, satisfied. "Now, can you tell me the story about the butterfly who got lost?" It was a story Caleb had made up months ago, about a butterfly who couldn't find her way home and had to trust other creatures to help guide her. He told it now, his voice soft and steady, watching his daughter's eyes drift closed. By the time the butterfly found her way back to her garden, Lily was asleep, breathing deep and even. Caleb sat there for a long time, watching her sleep, thinking about metamorphosis and chrysalises and the terrifying process of dissolving yourself to become something new. He thought about Madeline in her wheelchair, facing down a room full of people who should have protected her. He thought about General Foster recognizing him after 9 years, pulling him out of invisibility. He thought about Maria asking what lesson he wanted to teach his daughter. And he thought about the note in his pocket, the one that said, "Thank you for reminding me what courage looks like," and wondered if maybe courage wasn't about grand gestures or heroic moments. Maybe it was about small choices made every day, about showing up, about stepping forward when it would be easier to step back, about teaching his daughter that being brave meant being scared and doing it anyway. He pulled out his phone and opened a new message to Madeline. "I want to accept, but I need to do it my way. Can we talk about modifying the offer?" This time, the response was immediate. "Absolutely. Tell me what you need." Caleb spent the next hour typing and deleting and typing again, laying out his terms. He needed to keep his morning routine with Lily. He needed flexibility for school events and sick days and all the unpredictable chaos that came with being a single parent. He needed the security of knowing that if this didn't work, if he couldn't be the person Madeline wanted him to be, he wouldn't lose everything he'd built. And most importantly, he needed her to understand that he wasn't the hero from the video. He was just a father trying to do better, trying to show his daughter that making a difference didn't require superhuman abilities. It just required showing up and speaking up and refusing to look away when others needed help. Madeline's response came an hour later. "Your terms are more than fair. They're exactly what I was hoping you'd ask for. This isn't about turning you into something you're not, Caleb. It's about letting you be more fully who you already are. See you tomorrow at PS 112. Caleb read the message 3 times, feeling the weight of the decision settling over him like snow. There was no going back after tomorrow. Once he said yes, once he stepped into this new role, everything would change. His invisibility would evaporate. His carefully constructed routine would shift. The safe, small life he'd built would crack open. But maybe, he thought, as he finally headed to his own bed, maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Maybe Lily's poster had it right. Sometimes you had to completely change to become who you were meant to be. The next morning arrived too soon and not soon enough. Caleb woke before his alarm, his mind already racing through everything that needed to happen. Get Lily ready, walk her to school, attend the presentation, introduce her to Madeline, make the final decision that would reshape their lives. "Big day," he said to Lily over breakfast. She was too excited to eat, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate while explaining her presentation strategy. "I'm going third," she said. "After Emma, but before Tommy. Mrs. Chen said I have the best poster in the class, but I think Emma's is pretty good too. She did moths instead of butterflies because she said everyone does butterflies, but moths are interesting too." "Emma's smart," Caleb agreed, though his mind was elsewhere. In a few hours, he'd be sitting in a classroom watching his daughter present while Madeline Cross rolled in to meet them both. The 2 most important women in his life colliding in a moment that felt both momentous and terrifying. The walk to school was crisp and cold, winter hanging on even though spring was supposed to be arriving. Lily chattered the whole way, her nervousness manifesting as non-stop talking. Caleb let her words wash over him, responding when needed, mostly just grateful for the normalcy of it all. "You'll really be there?" Lily asked for the 3rd time as they reached the school gates. "You promise?" "I promise, Bug. Front row, or circle. Whatever." She giggled and hugged him tight. "I love you, Daddy." "Love you too." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Go be brilliant." He watched her run inside, backpack bouncing, then checked his watch. 4 hours until the presentation. 4 hours to figure out if he was making the biggest mistake of his life or the bravest decision. Caleb walked to a coffee shop near the school, claiming a corner table where he could spread out the folder from Madeline. He read through every page again, making notes in the margins, circling phrases that resonated or worried him. The position wasn't traditional security, it was culture change, ethics oversight, employee advocacy. He'd be the person people came to when they saw something wrong. The person who investigated harassment claims and discrimination complaints. The person who stood between power and the people it tried to crush. It was the job description that scared him most because it was exactly what he wanted to do and exactly what he'd been avoiding for 2 years. Caleb Hart? A woman's voice pulled him from his thoughts. He looked up to find a reporter standing beside his table, phone already recording. "I'm Jennifer Chen from The Times. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about the viral video." "No," Caleb said flatly. "You can't." "Just a few minutes. People want to know your story. The janitor who defended the CEO, the veteran who stepped up when no one else would. It's private," Caleb interrupted, "and I'm asking you to respect that. The video's already public. You're a public figure now, whether you like it or not." Jennifer sat down without invitation, leaning forward eagerly. "People are calling you a hero. Don't you think they deserve to know who you really are?" "They don't deserve anything from me," Caleb said, his voice low and controlled. "I didn't do what I did for recognition or attention. I did it because someone needed help. That's it. That's the whole story. But it's not just about you anymore. You're representing something bigger. The working class standing up to corporate abuse, veterans finding purpose after service, single fathers showing strength through vulnerability. You could use this platform to make real change. I could also use this platform to never have a private moment with my daughter again. Caleb started gathering his papers. I'm not interested in being a symbol or a story or a platform. I'm just trying to live my life. And the new job? The promotion Ms. Cross is offering you? Jennifer's eyes gleamed. That's not trying to capitalize on your 15 minutes of fame? Caleb stood, anger spiking through his carefully maintained calm. You need to leave. Now. This is a public place, and I'm publicly asking you to go away before I call the police and tell them you're harassing me. Caleb's military training kicked in, his voice dropping to the tone that had once commanded soldiers under fire. Leave. Now. Jennifer stood, but she didn't look intimidated. You can't hide from this, Mr. Hart. The story's out there. You might as well control the narrative while you can. She left, finally, and Caleb sank back into his chair, hands shaking with adrenaline. This was what he'd been afraid of. The visibility. The attention. The way privacy evaporated the moment you became interesting to people who made a living selling stories. He pulled out his phone and texted Madeline. Just got ambushed by a reporter? Is this what accepting your offer means? Becoming a public curiosity? Her response came quickly. No. It means I hire the best legal team in the city to protect your privacy. It means we control what information gets released and to whom. It means you're not alone in this. I'm sorry that happened. Another text followed immediately. And if you want to back out because of this, I understand. This is harder than I probably made it sound. Being visible makes you vulnerable in ways that are deeply uncomfortable. I won't hold it against you if you decide it's not worth it. Caleb stared at the messages, at Madeline's casual offer to let him walk away without consequences. Most bosses would have doubled down, promised him it would get easier, told him to toughen up. Instead, she was giving him an out, acknowledging the cost, respecting his right to choose. He typed slowly. I'm not backing out, but I need your help navigating this. I don't know how to be a public person. I don't want my daughter dragged into media circuses. Then we protect her, fiercely, whatever it takes. A pause, then. Still okay with me coming to the presentation? Or would you rather keep that separate? Caleb thought about Lily asking if he'd teach her to be brave, about metamorphosis and chrysalises and the terrifying beauty of transformation, about the fact that hiding hadn't made him safe, it had just made him smaller. Come, he typed. Lily should meet you. She should understand what I'm choosing and why. The next 3 hours crawled by. Caleb tried to read, tried to work through scenarios and conversations and possibilities, but his mind kept circling back to the same question. Was he brave or just reckless? Was he choosing courage or just responding to pressure? At 2:30, he walked back to PS 112. The hallway smelled like floor wax and cafeteria food, exactly like every school Caleb had ever been in. He followed signs to Mrs. Chen's classroom, where parents were already gathering, claiming spots around the circle of small chairs. Lily spotted him immediately, her face transforming with joy. Daddy, you came! Told you I would. He pulled her into a hug, then noticed her looking past him toward the door. He turned and saw Madeline rolling through the entrance, Rachel a step behind her, both of them looking slightly out of place in the institutional hallway. Miss Cross, Caleb said, moving toward her. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. Madeline looked around the classroom, taking in the colorful posters and children's artwork covering every surface. This is wonderful. So much creativity. Lily appeared at Caleb's side, her shyness overcome by curiosity. Are you Miss Cross, the one my daddy helped? I am, Madeline said, lowering her voice to match Lily's serious tone. And you must be Lily. Your father talks about you constantly. He does? Lily looked up at Caleb, surprised and pleased. What does he say? That you're brilliant and brave and the most important person in his world. Madeline smiled. And looking at your butterfly poster over there, I'd say he's right about the brilliant part at least. Lily beamed, any remaining shyness evaporating. Do you want to see it? I can show you before Mrs. Chen makes us start. I'd love that. Caleb watched his daughter lead Madeline across the classroom, chattering enthusiastically about metamorphosis and chrysalises. Other parents were watching too, some with curiosity, others with recognition. He saw phones come out, heard whispers. The video had spread far enough that even in this Queens elementary school, people knew who he was. Rachel moved to his side, her voice low. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, no idea." Caleb kept his eyes on Lily and Madeline. "This is either the best decision I've ever made or the worst." "Want to know what I think?" Rachel didn't wait for an answer. "I think you're exactly what Meridian needs, someone who hasn't been corrupted by corporate culture. Someone who still remembers what it means to put people first." She paused. "And I think Ms. Cross needs someone like you more than you know. Someone who sees her as a person, not a title. She seems pretty capable of taking care of herself." "She is. But everyone needs allies. Everyone needs people who will stand beside them when things get hard." Rachel's expression was thoughtful. "Last night, after you left, she cried. First time I've seen her cry in 2 years of working together. Not from sadness, from relief, because someone finally saw her as worth defending." Mrs. Chen clapped her hands, calling for attention. Parents settled into their circle, pulling out phones to record their children's presentations. Caleb found a spot next to Madeline, with Lily hovering nearby until Mrs. Chen gently directed her to sit with the other students. The first presentation was about ants, earnest and sweet, read entirely from note cards in a monotone voice. The second was Emma's moths, complete with actual specimens preserved in plastic cases. And then it was Lily's turn. She stood in the center of the circle, holding her poster, and Caleb saw the moment she registered all the parents watching. Her confidence wavered. Her voice started soft, uncertain. "My project is about butterflies," she began, stumbling slightly over the words. "Butterflies start as caterpillars, and then they—" She looked at Caleb, and he saw fear in her eyes. Stage fright, maybe, or just the overwhelming weight of everyone's attention. Caleb gave her a small nod, the kind he used to give soldiers before they went on difficult missions. "You've got this. I believe in you." Lily took a breath and started again, stronger this time. "Butterflies are proof that transformation is possible. They start as caterpillars, crawling on the ground, and people think that's all they'll ever be. But inside their chrysalis, something amazing happens. They dissolve completely. Everything they were breaks down and rebuilds into something totally different, something that can fly." She was reading directly from her poster now, her voice gaining confidence with each sentence. Caleb felt his throat tighten. "The coolest part is, the butterfly remembers being a caterpillar. Scientists proved it. So even though they changed completely, even though they learned to fly and see the world from up high, they still remember crawling on the ground. They remember what it was like to be small." Lily looked around the circle, meeting eyes. "My teacher says that's a metaphor. It means that when people grow and change, they shouldn't forget where they came from or who helped them get there." She set down her poster and looked directly at Caleb. "My dad taught me that. He used to be a soldier who saved people, and now he's a janitor who takes care of me. Some people might think that's going backward, becoming smaller. But I think he's been in his chrysalis. I think he's been changing into something new. And I think pretty soon he's going to fly again. And when he does, I'll be so proud because he never forgot who he was or what matters most." The classroom was silent. Then Madeline started clapping, and everyone else joined in. Lily took a small bow, grinning, and rushed back to her seat. Other presentations continued, but Caleb barely heard them. His daughter's words echoed in his head, reshaping everything he'd thought about the past 2 years. She hadn't seen him becoming smaller. She'd seen him transforming, preparing, building the strength to fly in a different way. When the presentations ended and parents started gathering their children, Caleb stayed in his seat, trying to process what had just happened. Madeline rolled closer, her expression thoughtful. "She's remarkable," Madeline said quietly. "You've raised an incredible person, Caleb." "She raised herself," Caleb said, his voice rough. "I just try not to screw it up too badly." "I don't think that's true." Madeline looked toward where Lily was showing her poster to Emma, their heads bent together in serious consultation. "But I do think she's right. About you being ready to fly again." Caleb turned to face her fully. "If I take this job, when I take this job, I need you to understand something. I'm not the person from the video. I'm not a hero or a symbol or any of the things people want me to be. I'm just someone trying to do better, trying to show his daughter that making a difference matters. That's exactly who I need you to be, Madeline said. Not a hero, just someone who cares, someone who'll stand up when it matters. Even if I'm scared? Especially then. Madeline smiled. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Caleb. It's being terrified and doing it anyway. You taught me that. Or reminded me, at least. Lily bounded over, still riding the high of her successful presentation. Did you like it? Did I do okay? You were perfect, Caleb said, pulling her into a hug. I'm so proud of you, Bug. Ms. Cross, what did you think? Lily looked up at Madeline expectantly. I think you're absolutely right, Madeline said seriously. About transformation and remembering where you come from. And I think your father is very lucky to have someone as wise as you in his life. I'm wise because he teaches me stuff, Lily said matter-of-factly. Like how to be brave and help people and stand up when things are wrong. She paused, then asked with childish directness, Are you going to give my dad a new job? Madeline glanced at Caleb, who nodded slightly. I'd like to, if he'll accept it. Will it make him happy? Lily asked. I hope so, Madeline said. It would be challenging work, important work, work that might be scary sometimes. Daddy's good at scary things, Lily declared confidently. He used to be a soldier. Soldiers do scary stuff all the time. They do, Madeline agreed, but this would be different. He'd be protecting people from things you can't always see, cruelty, unfairness, people being treated badly because of who they are or what they look like. Lily considered this with the utmost seriousness. Then she looked up at Caleb. Is that what you want to do, Daddy? Protect people again? And there it was. The question beneath all the questions. Did he want to step out of his chrysalis? Did he want to risk flying again? Did he want to be more than the safe, small version of himself he'd been building for 2 years? Caleb thought about Madeline in her wheelchair, facing down cruelty with dignity. He thought about General Foster recognizing him after 9 years. He thought about Maria asking what lesson he wanted to teach his daughter. And he thought about Lily's poster, sometimes you have to completely change to become who you're meant to be. Yeah, Bug, he said quietly. I think I do. Lily threw her arms around him, squeezing tight. Then you should do it. And you know what? I'll help. I can practice being brave too, and when I grow up, maybe I can protect people just like you. Caleb looked at Madeline over his daughter's head and saw understanding in her eyes. This wasn't just about him accepting a job. It was about choosing what kind of father he wanted to be. The kind who taught his daughter to hide from the world's hardness, or the kind who showed her how to face it with courage and compassion. Okay, he said to Madeline, the word feeling momentous and right. Okay, I'll take the job, but we do it my way, on my terms, with protections for Lily and flexibility for the life I've built. Done, Madeline said immediately. Whatever you need, you have my word. They shook hands, and Caleb felt the weight of the decision settle over him like armor. Familiar, protective, but also constraining in ways he'd have to learn to navigate. Other parents were leaving now, children in tow, and Caleb needed to get Lily home. But as they prepared to go, Madeline stopped him. Caleb, thank you for trusting me, for taking this chance. I know it's not easy. Nothing worth doing is, Caleb said, repeating something his own father had told him years ago. But maybe that's the point. They left PS 112 together, stepping out into afternoon sunlight that felt warmer than it had that morning. Lily walked between them, chattering about Emma's moths and how she wanted to do a project on fireflies next year because they made their own light. At the corner where they'd part ways, Madeline heading back to Manhattan, Caleb and Lily heading home, Lily suddenly asked, Miss Cross, can I ask you something? Of course. Does your wheelchair hurt? Like, is it uncomfortable? Lily, Caleb started, but Madeline held up a hand. It's okay. That's a fair question. She looked at Lily directly. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes I miss being able to walk or run or do things I used to do. But mostly, it's just part of who I am now. Like your hair color or how tall you are. It's not good or bad. It just is. Do people treat you differently because of it? Lily asked, and Caleb realized his daughter had inherited his inability to shy away from hard truths. "Yes," Madeline said honestly. "Some people do. They see the wheelchair before they see me. They make assumptions about what I can or can't do. That's why your father's help meant so much. He saw me as a person first. The wheelchair was just a detail." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "At school, there's a boy named Miguel who has a wheelchair too. Sometimes kids are weird around him, like they don't know how to act. But he's really funny and smart, and he beats everyone at math. I think people just need to pay more attention." "I think you're absolutely right," Madeline said, and her smile was genuine. "You're going to do amazing things, Lily Hart." They parted with promises to talk soon about start dates and schedules. Caleb watched Madeline roll away, Rachel beside her, two women navigating a world that wasn't built for them, but doing it anyway with grace and determination. "I like her," Lily announced as they walked home. "She's honest, and she doesn't talk down to me like some adults do." "She is honest," Caleb agreed. "That's one of the things I respect about her." "So when do you start your new job?" "I don't know yet. Soon, probably. We have to figure out the details first." "Will you be scared?" Lily asked, the question echoing her inquiry from the night before. "Terrified," Caleb admitted, "but I'll do it anyway, because sometimes being scared is how you know something matters." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, father and daughter navigating familiar streets that suddenly felt full of possibility. When they reached their building, Lily stopped at the entrance. "Daddy, I'm proud of you, for being brave, for deciding to fly again." Caleb knelt down to her level, taking both her hands. "And I'm proud of you, for being wise and kind and brave enough to tell me what I needed to hear." "We're a good team," Lily said seriously. "The best team," Caleb agreed. That night, after Lily was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Caleb sat at the kitchen table with Madeline's offer spread out before him. He signed his name at the bottom of the acceptance letter, committing himself to transformation, to visibility, to the terrifying work of becoming someone new while remembering who he'd always been. Tomorrow he'd start the process of leaving behind his janitorial work and stepping into something larger. Tomorrow, he'd begin learning how to protect people from institutional cruelty instead of just cleaning up its messes. Tomorrow, his chrysalis would finally crack open. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment of quiet gratitude for his daughter's wisdom, for Madeline's faith, for the chance to prove that courage wasn't about never falling, it was about learning to fly in the first place. Outside his window, the city hummed with the lives of millions, all of them carrying their own fears and hopes and moments of transformation. Caleb was just one person among them, no more special or significant than anyone else. But maybe that was the point. Maybe heroism wasn't about being extraordinary. Maybe it was about ordinary people making extraordinary choices when the moment demanded it, about standing up when others sat down, about refusing to let fear dictate who you could become. Caleb Hart folded the signed letter and placed it in an envelope addressed to Meridian Global. In the morning, he'd drop it in the mail, and with that single act, everything would change. But for now, in this quiet moment between who he'd been and who he was becoming, Caleb simply sat with the weight of his choice and found to his surprise that he was ready to fly. The envelope sat on Caleb's kitchen counter for 3 days before he finally mailed it. Not because he was having second thoughts, but because every time he looked at it, he felt the full weight of what he was committing to. On the fourth morning, Lily noticed it while eating her cereal. "Is that the job letter?" she asked, milk dripping from her spoon. "The one you're supposed to send to Miss Cross?" "Yeah, Bug. I keep meaning to mail it." "Daddy." Lily set down her spoon with exaggerated patience. "If you want to do something, you have to actually do it. You can't just think about it forever. That's procrastinating. Mrs. Chen taught us that word." Caleb couldn't help but smile. "When did you get so wise?" "I told you I'm 7 3/4, almost 8. She went back to her cereal, then added casually, "Plus, Miss Cross is waiting. It's not nice to keep people waiting when they're excited about something." That afternoon, after dropping Lily at school, Caleb finally walked the envelope to the nearest mailbox and let it fall through the slot. The sound of it hitting the bottom felt irrevocable, like the closing of one door and the violent opening of another. He stood there for a moment, hand still on the mailbox, wondering if he'd just made the best or worst decision of his life. His phone rang before he'd walked a block. Madeline's number. "I just wanted you to know," she said without preamble, "that I received your acceptance. Rachel hand-delivered it. We'll start the transition process next week if that works for you." That was fast. Caleb had expected more time, more distance between decision and action. "I didn't want to give you time to change your mind," Madeline said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Plus, we need you. Things are moving faster than I expected." "What things?" There was a pause long enough that Caleb stopped walking. "Marcus Verne filed a lawsuit yesterday, against the company and against me personally. He's claiming defamation, wrongful termination of a business relationship, and emotional distress. His legal team is one of the best in the city." Caleb felt ice settle in his stomach. "This is because of me, because I stepped in." "This is because of him," Madeline corrected firmly, "because he's a bully who can't handle being called out. You didn't create this situation, Caleb. You just refused to be complicit in it." "What does this mean for the company, for you?" "It means I'm about to be very busy, and it means I need someone I can trust watching my back while I deal with lawyers and board members and the press." Another pause. "It also means you should prepare for some attention. Verne's team has already requested your personnel file. They're going to dig into your background, your military service, everything." "Looking for what?" "Anything they can use to discredit you, to make you look unstable or violent or like someone who overreacts." Madeline's voice was gentle but honest. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for." Caleb thought about Lily at school, about the careful, quiet life he'd built. "Can they go after my daughter?" "Not if I have anything to say about it. I've already hired a privacy attorney specifically to protect your family. Anyone who tries to bring Lily into this will face immediate legal action." Steel entered Madeline's voice. "I meant what I said, Caleb. Whatever it takes. When do I start?" "Monday, if you're ready. If you need more time." "Monday's fine," Caleb interrupted. "The sooner I start, the sooner I can actually help instead of just worrying about what might happen." They discussed logistics for another 10 minutes. Where to report, who he'd be working with, what his first week would look like. It all felt surreal, like he was listening to someone else's life being planned. When they hung up, Caleb stood on the sidewalk watching the city move around him, everyone absorbed in their own dramas, and wondered if he'd just walked into something far bigger than one man defending one woman from one bully. That weekend, Caleb tried to prepare. He read through employee handbooks and company policies. He researched corporate ethics and harassment law. He made lists of questions and concerns and things he needed to understand before Monday arrived. But mostly, he spent time with Lily, soaking in the normalcy of their routine before everything changed. Saturday afternoon, they went to the park near their apartment, the one with the rusty swings and the basketball court where teenagers played pickup games. Lily was on the monkey bars when another girl around her age approached, her mother trailing behind with a phone in hand. "Are you Lily Hart?" the girl asked, shy but curious. Lily hung upside down from the bar, her face reddening. "Yeah, why?" "My mom showed me the video. Your dad's the hero janitor." The girl looked over at Caleb, who was sitting on a bench trying to be invisible. "That's so cool." "He's not a hero," Lily said, dropping from the bar and landing with practiced ease. "He's just my dad, and he's not a janitor anymore. He's going to be head of security at a big company." The girl's mother had wandered closer, phone still in hand. "Mr. Hart, I'm sorry to bother you, but could I get a picture? My husband and I both thought what you did was incredible. It's nice to see someone standing up for what's right." Caleb wanted to refuse, wanted to protect this small pocket of anonymity he had left. But the woman seemed genuine, and Lily was watching him carefully, waiting to see how he'd respond. "Sure," he said, standing, "but just one, and I'd appreciate if you kept my daughter out of it." The woman took a quick selfie with Caleb in the background, thanked him profusely, and left with her daughter. But the damage was done. Other parents had noticed. Whispers spread across the playground. More phones came out. By the time Caleb and Lily left, he'd been photographed a dozen times and asked for his autograph twice. "I'm sorry, Bug," he said as they walked home. "I didn't think it would be like this." "It's okay," Lily said, but her voice was small. I just wish people would see you, not the video guy. Me too. Caleb squeezed her hand. But this is what I signed up for. Being visible means people think they know you even when they don't. That night, Lily had a nightmare. She woke up crying, calling for him, and Caleb rushed to her room to find her tangled in her sheets, her stuffed elephant on the floor. "Daddy," she sobbed, throwing her arms around him. "They were taking pictures and asking questions, and you weren't there, and I couldn't find you, and everyone kept saying you were a hero, but I just wanted my dad." Caleb held her, his heart breaking. "I'm here, Bug. I'm right here. It was just a dream." "But what if it's not?" Lily pulled back, her face wet with tears. "What if the new job takes you away? What if you become the hero guy instead of my dad?" "That's not going to happen." Caleb wiped her tears with his thumbs, looking her straight in the eyes. "Listen to me, Lily. I don't care what anyone else calls me or what they think they know about me. To you, I'm always just dad. That's my most important job. That's the one that matters most. Understand?" She nodded, but uncertainty still shadowed her face. "Promise?" "I promise." Caleb kissed her forehead. "Now, how about we make some hot chocolate, and you tell me what you're learning in school this week?" They sat in the kitchen at 2 a.m, drinking cocoa and talking about fractions and spelling tests and the new library book Lily was reading. Eventually, she fell asleep with her head on the table, and Caleb carried her back to bed, watching her settle into sleep with the kind of fierce protectiveness that made his chest ache. This was what mattered, not lawsuits or job titles or viral videos. The small person who trusted him completely, who needed him to be present and steady, and just her dad. Whatever happened at Meridian, whatever role he took on, he couldn't lose sight of that. Monday morning arrived with the kind of cold, bright clarity that made everything feel sharper. Caleb dressed in the one suit he owned, bought years ago for his wedding, and worn maybe 3 times since. It didn't fit quite right anymore. Tighter in the shoulders, looser in the waist. But it would have to do until he could afford something better. "You look fancy," Lily said at breakfast, eyeing him critically. "But the tie is crooked." She stood on her chair and fixed it with surprising competence, her small fingers working the knot into place. When she was done, she patted his chest and nodded approval. "There. Now you look like someone important." "I've always been someone important," Caleb said. "I'm your dad." "I know. But now other people will know it too." She sat back down, suddenly serious. "Daddy, are you scared?" It was becoming their ritual, this question, a check-in, a way for both of them to acknowledge the fear without letting it win. "Terrified," Caleb admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." "Because that's what brave people do," Lily finished, repeating the lesson he'd taught her. "Okay, go be brave. I'll be brave here at school." They walked to PS 112 together one last time in their old routine. Tomorrow, Caleb's schedule would shift. Earlier mornings, different hours, a whole new rhythm to learn. He tried to memorize everything about this walk. The way Lily's hand felt in his, the bodega owner who always waved, the crossing guard who knew them by name. All the small pieces of the life he'd built, about to be rearranged. At the school gates, Lily hugged him extra tight. "Love you, Daddy. Go change the world." "Love you too, Bug. Learn something amazing." He watched her disappear inside, then turned toward the subway station, his heart hammering against his ribs. The commute into Manhattan was packed, bodies pressed together in the intimate anonymity of public transit. Caleb kept his head down, trying not to notice when people did double takes or pulled out phones. The video had been viewed 15 million times now. He was recognizable in ways that made his skin crawl. Meridian Tower looked different in daylight, more imposing somehow. Caleb walked through the main entrance, past the security desk where the guard from his first visit gave him a knowing nod, and took the elevator to the 42nd floor. Rachel was waiting when the doors opened. "Welcome to your first day," she said, handing him a badge. "Security clearance is already loaded. Your office is down the hall. Nothing fancy, but it's yours. Ms. Cross wants to meet with you at 9 for orientation." "Office?" Caleb looked at the badge, at his name printed below the title Director of Ethics and Employee Advocacy. It still didn't feel real. "Did you think you'd be working from a closet?" Rachel smiled. "Come on, I'll show you around." The office was small but functional. Desk, computer, filing cabinet, and a window that looked out over the city. Someone had already stocked it with supplies and left a welcome folder on the desk. Caleb stood in the doorway, afraid to enter, afraid that stepping inside would make this irrevocable. "You okay?" Rachel asked gently. "I was mopping this floor 2 weeks ago," Caleb said. "Now I have an office here. It's surreal." "Change usually is." Rachel touched his shoulder briefly. "But you belong here, Caleb. Miss Cross doesn't make hiring decisions lightly. She sees something in you that we need. Trust that." She left him to get settled, promising to collect him before the 9 o'clock meeting. Caleb sat at his desk, and turned on the computer. While it booted up, he noticed a frame on the corner of the desk. Inside was Lily's butterfly poster, the one from her presentation, with a note attached in Madeline's handwriting. "To remind you why transformation matters. MC." The gesture hit him harder than he expected. Madeline understood. She got that this wasn't just about him changing careers or taking on new responsibilities. It was about becoming someone new while honoring everything he'd been. About flying without forgetting how to crawl. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and introductions. Madeline walked him through the scope of his role, the reporting structure, the resources at his disposal. He'd have a small team, 3 people who'd report to him, handling complaints and investigations. He'd sit on the executive committee, have direct access to the board, and serve as the final authority on ethics matters within the company. "It's a lot," Madeline said, watching his face. "I know, but you don't have to do it all at once. We'll build the program together." "What happens with Vern's lawsuit?" Caleb asked. "Does that affect what I'm doing here?" "The lawyers are handling it. They're confident it'll be dismissed. Vern has no case, but in the meantime, he's doing maximum damage to our reputation. That's where you come in." Madeline pulled up something on her computer, then turned the screen toward him. "These are the employee complaints we've received in the past 6 months. Harassment, discrimination, hostile work environment. Some are legitimate, some are noise. All of them were ignored by the previous ethics officer, who was more concerned with protecting executives than protecting employees." Caleb scrolled through the list, his stomach sinking. There were dozens of complaints, many from junior employees, several mentioning the same senior managers. Why didn't anyone do anything? Because speaking up is dangerous when the people you're speaking up about have power over your career. Madeline's voice was hard. Because systems protect themselves, and people who challenge those systems get crushed. That's what I'm asking you to fix. Not overnight, but eventually. Where do I start? Here. Madeline handed him a file. Her name is Jasmine Winters. She's a data analyst in our finance department. 3 weeks ago, she filed a complaint against her supervisor for creating a hostile work environment. The complaint was acknowledged but never investigated. Last Friday, her supervisor gave her a negative performance review, her first in 4 years, and put her on a performance improvement plan. Caleb opened the file, reading through Jasmine's complaint. The supervisor had apparently made repeated comments about her appearance, asked intrusive questions about her personal life, and retaliated when she tried to set boundaries. The pattern was clear, documented, and completely ignored. "I want you to investigate this personally," Madeline said. "Interview Jasmine, interview her supervisor, interview anyone who might have witnessed the behavior. Then give me a recommendation. If the complaint is substantiated, we act immediately. No more protecting bad managers at the expense of good employees. And if her supervisor is well connected, if going after him creates problems, then we deal with the problems." Madeline's eyes were fierce. "That's the whole point, Caleb. We don't protect power anymore. We protect people. That's what this job is. That's what I'm asking you to do." He spent the rest of the day reading through Jasmine's file and related documentation. The picture that emerged was ugly and familiar. A mid-level manager who'd been allowed to create his own little fiefdom, protecting his ego and insecurity by belittling anyone who threatened him. Jasmine wasn't his first target. She was just the first person brave enough to formally complain. At 3:30, Caleb left Meridian to meet Lily at school, one of the non-negotiables he'd written into his contract. Rachel had scheduled around it without question, blocking out that time on his calendar every day. As he rode the subway back to Queens, Caleb felt the whiplash of his 2 worlds, the corporate office with its power dynamics and politics, and the elementary school where the biggest drama was who got to be line leader. Lily was waiting in the gates, backpack on, chattering with Emma about their science project. When she saw Caleb, her whole face lit up. "Daddy, how was your first day? Did you save anyone? Did you fight bad guys?" "No fighting," Caleb said, pulling her into a hug. "Just a lot of meetings and paperwork. Pretty boring, actually." "That doesn't sound like hero stuff," Lily said, sounding disappointed. "Most of the time, helping people isn't exciting," Caleb explained as they started walking home. "It's just doing the work, day after day, making small changes that add up to big differences." "Like metamorphosis," Lily said, making the connection. "The caterpillar doesn't turn into a butterfly all at once. It happens slowly, inside the chrysalis, where no one can see." Exactly like that. Caleb marveled again at his daughter's ability to understand complex ideas through her own frame of reference. The boring paperwork is the chrysalis work, the stuff that matters but nobody sees. That evening, after Lily was in bed, Caleb sat at his kitchen table preparing for his interview with Jasmine Winters. He read through her complaint again, making notes on questions to ask and information to gather. The supervisor's name was David Chen, no relation to Lily's teacher, and he'd been with Meridian for 12 years, climbing steadily through the ranks. He had friends on the executive team. He golfed with board members. Going after him wouldn't be simple or easy, but that was the job. That was what Madeline had hired him to do. The next morning, Caleb arrived at Meridian early, before most employees, and set up in one of the small conference rooms. Jasmine Winters arrived at 8:30, exactly on time, wearing a professional dress that looked carefully chosen and carrying herself with the kind of brittle dignity that came from expecting the worst. She was younger than Caleb expected, maybe 28, with dark skin and careful braids and eyes that assessed him with open skepticism. "You're the janitor," she said, sitting down across from him. "The one from the video." "I was the janitor," Caleb corrected gently. "Now I'm the person investigating your complaint. My name is Caleb Hart. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Did I have a choice? There was challenge in her voice, a test. "Yes, this interview is voluntary. If you don't want to talk to me, that's your right, but I'd like to understand what happened so I can help make it right." Jasmine studied him for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if he was legitimate or just another performative gesture. Finally, she said, "How do I know this isn't just for show? That you'll actually do something instead of filing my complaint in a drawer like the last guy?" "You don't," Caleb admitted. "You have no reason to trust me or this process. The system has already failed you once, but I'm asking you to try anyway, to tell me what happened, and I promise I'll listen, and I'll act on what you tell me." Something in his honesty seemed to reach her. Jasmine's shoulders lowered slightly, and she opened her own folder, pulling out printed emails and documented incidents. "It started about 6 months ago," she began, her voice steady but tight. "Small things at first. David, my supervisor, he started commenting on what I wore, saying things like, 'That dress is very eye-catching,' or 'You're really putting in effort today.' I tried to laugh it off, but it made me uncomfortable." "Did you tell him that?" Caleb asked, taking notes. "I tried. I said I preferred to keep things professional. That just made it worse." Jasmine's hands tightened on her papers. "He started asking about my personal life. Was I dating anyone? What did I do on weekends? Did I want to get drinks after work? I kept declining, kept trying to redirect to work topics, but he wouldn't stop. The pattern was textbook harassment, testing boundaries, pushing further when no one stopped him, creating an environment where the target felt increasingly uncomfortable and isolated." "When did you decide to file a formal complaint?" Caleb asked. "After he cornered me in the supply closet." Jasmine's voice went flat, emotionless, in the way trauma survivors learn to protect themselves. "He said he'd noticed I seemed tense, that maybe I needed to relax more, have some fun. He put his hand on my waist. I pushed him away and walked out. And that's when I knew I couldn't just handle it on my own anymore." "What happened after you filed the complaint?" "Nothing. For 3 weeks, nothing. Then suddenly I got a performance review saying my work wasn't meeting expectations. David said I seemed distracted, that my attention to detail had slipped. He put me on a 90-day improvement plan." Jasmine looked up at Caleb, and he saw fear beneath her anger. If I don't pass the improvement plan, I lose my job, and he controls whether I pass. Caleb felt rage building in his chest, the same rage he'd felt watching Marcus Verne humiliate Madeline. The system was designed to protect people like David Chen, to make victims like Jasmine pay for speaking up, to ensure that power faced no consequences while those with no power bore all the risk. That's retaliation, he said quietly. And it's illegal. You're protected under federal law from retaliation for filing a good faith harassment complaint. Protected by who? Jasmine's laugh was bitter. By HR? They're the ones who ignored my complaint. By my supervisor? He's the one retaliating. By the company? They don't care about me. I'm replaceable. He's valuable. You're not replaceable, Caleb said, meeting her eyes. And I'm going to prove that David Chen isn't as valuable as he thinks he is. I need you to do something for me, though. What? I need you to keep a detailed record of everything, every interaction with David, every comment, every instance where you feel he's retaliating. Write it down immediately with dates and times. Email it to yourself so there's a timestamp. Can you do that? Why? What are you going to do? I'm going to interview David and anyone else who might have witnessed his behavior. I'm going to build a case, and then I'm going to recommend to Ms. Cross that we terminate him for cause. Caleb's voice was steady, certain, but I need your help to do it right, to make sure it sticks. Can you work with me? Jasmine stared at him, clearly torn between hope and the cynicism that came from being let down before. If this blows up, if he finds out I'm cooperating with an investigation, he'll make my life hell. Then we move fast, Caleb said. I'll interview him today. I'll gather evidence this week. And by next Monday, either he's gone or I am. That's my promise to you. Why? The question came out raw, confused. Why do you care? You don't know me. You just got this job. Why risk it for some analyst you've never met? Because this is exactly what I was hired to do, Caleb said simply. And because what's happening to you is wrong. It's cruel and it's illegal, and it's the kind of thing that destroys people's lives while the David Chens of the world go home and sleep fine. Someone has to stop it. That someone is me. Jasmine wiped at her eyes quickly, not quite crying, but close. Okay, I'll do it. I'll keep records, but please don't let me down. I can't go through this again. I won't, Caleb said, and meant it with everything in him. After Jasmine left, Caleb sat in the conference room reviewing his notes and planning his next moves. He needed to interview David Chen before the supervisor had time to prepare or coordinate his story. He needed to talk to Jasmine's co-workers, to see if anyone else had witnessed inappropriate behavior. He needed to review David's employment history, looking for patterns. This was the work Madeline had hired him for. The unglamorous, difficult, often thankless work of holding powerful people accountable. It wasn't dramatic, it wouldn't go viral, but it mattered in ways that videos and headlines never could. He called David Chen's extension and scheduled an interview for that afternoon, identifying himself only as someone from the ethics office following up on a routine matter. David agreed easily, sounding unconcerned. Why would he be worried? The system had always protected him before, but the system had changed. It just didn't know it yet. At noon, Caleb met with his new team, 2 investigators and an administrative coordinator, all of whom had been working under the previous ethics officer. They viewed him with open curiosity and barely concealed skepticism. So you're the hero janitor, one of the investigators said, not bothering to hide his sarcasm. Come to save us all. I'm Caleb Hart, Caleb corrected calmly, and I'm here to do a job, which is investigate employee complaints thoroughly and fairly, regardless of who's involved. If you can't do that work with integrity, you're welcome to transfer to another department. The room went quiet. The sarcastic investigator, his name was Derek, straightened slightly, reassessing. We've tried, the other investigator said, a woman named Patricia who looked tired and worn down. The last director shut down any investigation that might upset someone important. We learned to just go through the motions. That ends now, Caleb said. I need your help investigating a case. Data analyst reporting hostile work environment and retaliation from her supervisor. The supervisor is David Chen. Anyone familiar with him? Patricia and Derek exchanged glances. He's connected, Derek said slowly. Friends with half the executive team. Last time someone complained about him, the complaint disappeared. This one won't, Caleb said. I'm interviewing him this afternoon. I need you two to pull his employment file, look at his performance reviews, check if there are any other complaints, formal or informal, in his history. Can you do that? We can, Patricia said. But Hart, Caleb, you should know what you're walking into. Chen has protection, people who'll vouch for him. Going after him isn't like going after some random manager. It's going to get messy. Good, Caleb said, surprising them. Messy means people care enough to fight. That's when the work matters most. He spent the lunch hour reviewing harassment law and company policy, making sure he understood exactly what constituted a violation and what evidence he'd need. When David Chen arrived at 2 o'clock, Caleb was ready. David was exactly what Caleb expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of practiced charm that made everything sound reasonable even when it wasn't. He sat down with casual confidence, smiling like they were old friends. So what's this about? David asked. Routine ethics interview? I've never had one of these before. It's about a complaint filed against you by one of your direct reports, Caleb said, watching David's face carefully. Jasmine Winters. She's alleging harassment and retaliation. The charm flickered, but held. Jasmine? Oh, that's unfortunate. She's been struggling lately. Performance issues, attitude problems. I've been trying to help her improve, but sometimes people don't want to take responsibility for their own shortcomings. Tell me about your interactions with her, Caleb said, keeping his voice neutral. How often do you communicate? What's your management style? David launched into a practice speech about being a hands-on manager who believes in direct communication and honest feedback. He painted himself as someone who cared deeply about his team's success, who went above and beyond to mentor struggling employees. He made Jasmine sound like a problem employee who couldn't handle constructive criticism. But Caleb had conducted hundreds of interviews in the military, learning to read people under stress, and he saw the tells. The way David's hands moved too much when talking about Jasmine, the slight shift in his eyes when he mentioned their interactions, the carefully constructed narrative that sounded rehearsed. Jasmine says you made comments about her appearance, Caleb said, interrupting David mid-sentence, that you asked personal questions about her dating life, that you cornered her in a supply closet and put your hand on her waist. Is that accurate? David's face flushed. That's completely taken out of context. I might have complimented her outfit once or twice. I might have asked casual questions, the kind any manager asks their team. And the supply closet thing, I was reaching for supplies and she happened to be in my way. If she felt uncomfortable, she never said anything. She filed a formal complaint, Caleb pointed out. After I gave her a performance review she didn't like. David leaned forward, his charm giving way to something sharper. Look, Mr. Hart, can I call you Caleb? You seem like a reasonable guy. You're new here. You don't understand the dynamics. Jasmine is a mediocre employee who's trying to avoid accountability by making false accusations. This is a classic case of weaponizing HR to avoid legitimate criticism. Is it? Caleb said flatly. Yes, and honestly, I'm disappointed that someone in your position would give credence to obviously spurious claims. David's voice took on a patronizing edge. I've been with this company 12 years. I have an exemplary record. I'm friends with several executives. If you pursue this nonsense, you're going to make a lot of enemies in places you can't afford to have them. There it was. The threat, barely veiled. The reminder that David Chen had power and protection, and Caleb did not. Caleb thought about Jasmine's face when she'd asked why he cared. He thought about all the other employees who'd filed complaints that went nowhere. He thought about systems that protected powerful men and sacrificed vulnerable women to keep those systems running smoothly. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chen, Caleb said, standing. I'll be in touch if I have additional questions. That's it? David looked surprised. You're not going to, grill me? Accuse me of something? I don't need to accuse you of anything, Caleb said. The evidence will speak for itself. Have a good afternoon. He left David sitting in the conference room looking confused and slightly worried, which was exactly what Caleb wanted. Worried people made mistakes, and he needed David Chen to make enough mistakes to bury himself. By 4 o'clock, Patricia and Derek had assembled David Chen's complete file. The picture it painted was damning, a pattern of behavior going back years, complaints that had been quietly resolved, settlement agreements with NDAs attached, performance reviews that ranged from stellar to scathing depending on who was writing them. "He's done this before," Patricia said quietly, "multiple times. But he always skates because he's good at his job and brings in revenue." "Not anymore," Caleb said, reviewing the documents. "I need to present this to Ms. Cross tomorrow morning. Can you help me put together a comprehensive report?" They worked late into the evening, past the time when Caleb should have been heading home. He texted Maria to pick up Lily, promising he'd make it up to her. The guilt sat heavy in his chest. This was exactly what he'd been afraid of, choosing work over his daughter. But the work mattered too much to put off. By 7 o'clock, they had a 20-page report documenting David Chen's pattern of harassment, the company's failure to address it, and the systemic problems that allowed men like him to thrive. Caleb read through it twice, making sure every claim was documented and defensible. Then he emailed it to Madeline with a single line. "We need to talk about David Chen tomorrow morning, first thing." Her response came immediately. 8 a.m., my office. Bring the full file." Caleb finally headed home, exhausted and wired in equal measure. The apartment was dark when he arrived, but he could hear Lily's soft snoring from her room. He looked in on her, sprawled across her bed, elephant clutched tight, peaceful in a way that made his chest ache. This was what he was fighting for. Not just for Jasmine, though that mattered immensely, but for the world Lily would inherit. A world where speaking up was rewarded, not punished. Where power was accountable. Where being vulnerable didn't make you a target. That night, Caleb barely slept. He kept rehearsing his presentation to Madeline, anticipating objections and preparing responses. David Chen had powerful friends. There would be pushback. There would be consequences for moving against him. But some things were worth the consequences. Some battles had to be fought regardless of the cost. Caleb had learned that in Afghanistan, carrying wounded soldiers through firefights. He'd learned it watching Madeline face down Marcus Verne. And he was about to prove it again by refusing to let one more woman's complaint disappear into corporate silence. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, Caleb walked into Madeline's office with David Chen's file and his first major recommendation as Director of Ethics. It was time to show Meridian Global what justice looked like when someone finally cared enough to fight for it. Madeline was already at her desk when Caleb arrived, 2 cups of coffee waiting, one for her, one for him. The gesture was small but significant, an acknowledgement that they were in this together. "Tell me," she said without preamble, gesturing to the chair across from her. Caleb laid out the file, walking her through David Chen's history page by page. The complaints that had been buried, the settlements paid quietly, the pattern of behavior that had been ignored because Chen brought in revenue and knew the right people. With each revelation, Madeline's expression grew harder, more determined. "How did this happen?" she asked when he finished. "How did we let this go on for years?" "Because systems protect themselves," Caleb said, repeating her own words back to her. "Because speaking up was dangerous and staying quiet was safe. Because nobody wanted to be the person who rocked the boat. Until now." Madeline pulled the file closer, scanning the evidence. "What's your recommendation?" "Terminate David Chen for cause. Immediately. No severance, no negotiation. Then we reach out to every woman who signed an NDA and offer to release them from it if they want to speak. We acknowledge publicly that we failed them and we're committed to doing better." "That's going to cost millions in legal fees," Madeline said. "The board will fight me on it." "Then let them fight." Caleb leaned forward. "You hired me to change the culture here, to make this a place where people are protected instead of power. We can't do that if we're afraid of the cost. We can't do that if we're still choosing comfort over courage." Madeline studied him for a long moment, and Caleb saw calculation and conviction warring in her expression. Finally, she nodded. "Do it. Draw up the termination paperwork. I'll handle the board." "They're going to push back hard. Chen has friends." "So do I," Madeline interrupted. "And more importantly, I have the truth and legal standing and a new ethics director who isn't afraid to do his job. That's more than enough." She made the calls while Caleb sat there listening to her navigate board politics with the same steel she'd shown facing down Marcus Verne. Some board members were supportive, others were skeptical. One threatened to resign if she moved forward. Madeline thanked him for his years of service and suggested he submit his resignation letter by end of business. By noon, the termination papers were ready. Caleb delivered them personally to David Chen's office, with Patricia and Derek flanking him as witnesses. Chen looked up from his computer, his confident smile faltering when he saw their expressions. "What's this?" he asked, taking the envelope Caleb held out. "Your termination letter. Effective immediately. You're being dismissed for cause due to sustained harassment of multiple employees in violation of company ethics policies." Caleb's voice was steady, professional. "Security will escort you out. You have 15 minutes to collect personal items from your office." Chen's face went through several shades of red. "You can't do this. I have rights. I'll sue this company into the ground. I know people, important people, who will make sure you regret this." "You're welcome to pursue legal action," Caleb said calmly, "but I'd advise you to read the documentation in that envelope first. We have sworn statements from 5 employees, including Jasmine Winters. We have emails you sent that violate harassment policies. We have a pattern of behavior going back 8 years. If you want to take this to court, we'll be happy to make all of that public record." The color drained from Chen's face. "This is a witch hunt. You're new here. You don't understand how things work. Madeline Cross is just using you to settle personal scores." "Ms. Cross is doing what should have been done years ago," Caleb corrected. "She's protecting her employees from managers who abuse their power. Now you can either collect your things quietly, or security can collect them for you. Your choice." Chen stood, his hands shaking with rage. "You have no idea what you've just done. I made this department what it is. I brought in millions in revenue. They'll never forgive you for this." "I'm not looking for forgiveness," Caleb said. "I'm doing my job." Security arrived, the same 2 guards from the night of the gala, the ones Caleb had gently moved aside. They looked at him with new understanding now, seeing him not as the janitor who'd overstepped, but as someone with actual authority. "Gentlemen," Caleb said to them, "please escort Mr. Chen out of the building. He's no longer employed here." They did, professionally and without incident, though Chen kept up a steady stream of threats and insults all the way to the elevator. When he was gone, the finance department erupted in whispers and speculation. Caleb stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling the weight of what he'd just done, then headed to Jasmine Winters' desk. She looked up when he approached, her eyes wide and uncertain. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "People are saying David was fired." "It's true. He's gone. The performance improvement plan he put you on is being removed from your file. You're a valued employee, Ms. Winters, and we failed you. I'm sorry for that." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. She stood abruptly, and for a moment Caleb thought she might hug him, but she caught herself. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." "Thank you for being brave enough to speak up," Caleb said. "Without you, we couldn't have stopped him." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and damage control. 2 executives called to express their displeasure with Chen's termination. 3 employees came to Caleb's office to report their own experiences with harassment, emboldened by seeing the system actually work for once. By 5 o'clock, Caleb's head was spinning with the complexity of what he'd unleashed. Rachel appeared in his doorway. "Ms. Cross wants to see you before you leave." Madeline was in her office, staring out the windows at the city. She didn't turn when Caleb entered. "The board met this afternoon," she said. "Emergency session. 3 members wanted to reverse Chen's termination, said we acted too hastily, that we should have given him a chance to defend himself." "And?" Caleb felt his stomach drop. "And I told them that defending employees takes precedence over defending managers. That if they couldn't support that principle, they should find another company to serve." She turned to face him, and Caleb saw exhaustion in every line of her face. 2 of them resigned. We'll need to find replacements." "I'm sorry," Caleb said. "I didn't mean to create this much chaos." "Don't apologize for doing the right thing." Madeline rolled closer. "This is exactly the chaos we needed. The kind that breaks old patterns and forces us to build new ones. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, we're going to lose people who can't adapt, but that's the cost of real change." "Jasmine thanked me today," Caleb said quietly. "She thanked me for believing her. That's heartbreaking, that she had to be grateful for basic decency." "I know, but that's why this matters. Every time we hold someone accountable, every time we protect an employee instead of protecting power, we're showing people that speaking up is possible, that justice isn't just a corporate slogan. Madeline paused. You did good work today, Caleb. Really good work. The praise settled over him like a weight and a warmth simultaneously. Thank you. But this is just one case. There are dozens more in the files, years of complaints that went nowhere. Then we work through them, one at a time, until people trust that the system actually works. Madeline smiled tiredly. Go home. Be with your daughter. Tomorrow we start on the next case. Caleb left Meridian feeling hollowed out and filled up at the same time. The work was harder than he'd expected, the emotional toll steeper, but it mattered in ways his military service never had. Every investigation, every terminated manager, every employee who finally got justice, these were victories that would ripple outward, changing lives in small but crucial ways. The subway ride back to Queens felt like traveling between worlds. Manhattan with its corporate towers and power struggles, Queens with its elementary schools and corner bodegas. Both worlds were his now. He had to learn to live in both without losing himself in either. Lily was waiting when he got home, bouncing with barely contained excitement. Daddy, guess what happened at school today? What happened, Bug? Caleb dropped his bag and pulled her into a hug. Mrs. Chen said my butterfly poster was so good that it's going to be displayed in the school library. And Tommy Martinez asked if I wanted to be partners for our next project because he said I'm really smart. She pulled back, her face glowing. Also, Emma invited me to her birthday party and said, I could bring you because you're the coolest dad. Caleb laughed, feeling some of the day's tension drain away. Emma said I'm the coolest dad? Well, her exact words were, your dad seems nice, but I could tell she meant coolest. Lily grabbed his hand. Come see what I made for dinner. Aunt Maria helped, but I did most of it. Dinner was spaghetti with sauce that was slightly too salty and garlic bread that was slightly too burnt, and it was perfect. They ate together at their small kitchen table, Lily talking nonstop about school and friends and the book she was reading. Caleb listened, asking questions, storing away details, being present in the way he'd promised himself he would always be. After dinner, while Lily worked on homework, Caleb's phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Hart? A woman's voice, nervous and uncertain. My name is Rebecca Torres. I used to work at Meridian Global. I heard about what happened to David Chen today, and I wanted to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Ms. Torres. I was just doing my job. No, you don't understand. I filed a complaint against David 3 years ago. They offered me a settlement and an NDA, and I took it because I needed the money and I was afraid. But taking that money meant staying silent while he did to other women what he did to me. I've been carrying that guilt for years. Caleb's throat tightened. That wasn't your fault. The system failed you. You did what you needed to survive. Maybe, but hearing that he finally faced consequences, that someone actually believed the women who spoke up, it matters, Mr. Hart. It matters more than you know. Her voice broke slightly. I'm calling because if you're really releasing people from their NDAs, I want to be released. I want to tell my story, not for revenge or money, just so other women know they're not alone. I'll make sure that happens, Caleb promised. Give me your contact information. We'll have legal reach out this week. They talked for another 10 minutes, Rebecca sharing pieces of her experience, Caleb listening and documenting and making notes about how to better support employees in the future. When they hung up, he sat for a moment with his phone in his hand, thinking about all the Rebecca Torreses out there. People who'd been hurt by systems designed to protect power instead of people. This was what Madeline had hired him for. Not just investigating complaints, but rebuilding trust. Showing people that speaking up wouldn't destroy them. Creating an environment where dignity was guaranteed instead of negotiated. It was overwhelming. It was necessary. It was, Caleb realized with surprise, exactly what he was meant to be doing. Over the next 2 weeks, the changes at Meridian accelerated. Caleb's team investigated and resolved a dozen complaints. 3 more managers were terminated. Several executives took early retirement rather than adapt to the new culture. And slowly, cautiously, employees started coming forward with stories they'd been afraid to tell. The press coverage was intense. Some outlets praised Meridian's transformation. Others accused Madeline of conducting a witch hunt. Marcus Verne's lawsuit gained traction, his lawyers painting Madeline as an unstable CEO who'd let a janitor-turned-vigilante run roughshod over established business practices. Through it all, Caleb maintained his routine with Lily. Morning walks to school, afternoon pickups, weekend trips to the park. He'd negotiated his schedule carefully, protecting the pieces of his life that mattered most, and Madeline had honored every boundary he'd set. "You're doing it," Maria said one Sunday afternoon while watching Lily play at the park. "The thing you were afraid of, being a father and being someone who makes a difference. You're doing both." "Barely," Caleb said. "Some days I feel like I'm failing at everything simultaneously." "That's called being human." Maria bumped his shoulder with hers. "You know what Lily told me last week? She said she's proud of you, said you're showing her what it means to fight for people who can't fight for themselves." Caleb felt his eyes burn. "She said that?" "Verbatim. That kid has a vocabulary that puts most adults to shame." Maria smiled. "You're raising someone special, Cal. Someone who sees the world clearly and wants to make it better. That's not failing. That's the opposite of failing." 3 weeks after David Chen's termination, Madeline called an all-hands meeting. Every Meridian employee gathered in the building's main conference hall, filling seats and standing room, buzzing with speculation about what would be announced. Caleb stood at the back with his team, watching Madeline roll to the front of the room. She'd asked him to join her at the podium, but he'd declined. This was her moment, her company, her courage that had made all of this possible. "Thank you all for coming," Madeline began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone. "I know the past month has been turbulent. We've made difficult decisions. We've said goodbye to colleagues. We've confronted uncomfortable truths about who we've been as a company." The room was silent, everyone leaning forward to hear. "Some of you are wondering if this is sustainable," Madeline continued, "if we can maintain a business while also maintaining our principles. The answer is yes. Not only is it possible, it's necessary, because a company that doesn't protect its people isn't worth protecting." She paused, looking around the room, making eye contact with employees in all sections. "Over the past 3 weeks, we've resolved 18 formal complaints of harassment and discrimination. We've terminated 7 managers and 3 executives. We've released 12 former employees from non-disclosure agreements, allowing them to tell their stories without legal repercussions. And we're not done." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "But we're not just punishing past behavior," Madeline said. "We're building new systems, new reporting mechanisms, new accountability measures, new training programs. We're creating an environment where speaking up is rewarded, not punished, where your identity, your race, your gender, your disability status doesn't determine how you're treated." She gestured toward the back of the room, toward Caleb. "This transformation wouldn't be possible without our new Director of Ethics and Employee Advocacy, Caleb Hart. Many of you know him from a video that went viral a few weeks ago. But what you might not know is that Caleb took this position not for recognition or advancement, but because he believes that protecting people is more important than protecting profit. He's shown us what real courage looks like, not in dramatic moments, but in daily choices to stand up for what's right." The room erupted in applause. Caleb felt his face heat, uncomfortable with the attention, but people were turning to look at him with expressions ranging from gratitude to respect to hope. "I'm not perfect," Madeline said when the applause died down. "This company isn't perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to face challenges. But I promise you this, we will never again choose comfort over courage. We will never again protect power at the expense of people. And we will always believe you when you tell us something is wrong." The applause this time was thunderous, sustained, people standing and cheering. Caleb saw Jasmine Winters in the crowd, tears streaming down her face, clapping harder than anyone. He saw Patricia and Derek, his team members, grinning and nodding. He saw dozens of employees who'd filed complaints, who'd been ignored or dismissed or retaliated against, finally seeing their experiences validated. After the meeting, Caleb was surrounded by people wanting to shake his hand or share their own stories. He listened to each one, making mental notes, promising follow-up, showing them that their experiences mattered. By the time he escaped to his office, it was past 6 o'clock, and he'd missed pickup time for Lily. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Maria and 1 text. "Don't panic. I got Lily from school. We're at your apartment making pizza. Take your time." Caleb called her back immediately. "I'm so sorry." "Stop," Maria interrupted. "You were working, doing important things." "That's okay, Cal. You don't have to apologize for having a demanding job." "But I promised." "And you kept your promise 99% of the time. 1 missed pickup doesn't make you a bad father. It makes you human." He heard Lily's voice in the background, asking if it was Daddy. "Hold on, someone wants to talk to you." "Daddy?" Lily's voice burst through the phone. "Aunt Maria and I made pizza with pepperoni and olives, and she let me throw the dough in the air, and I only dropped it once." "That sounds amazing, Bug. I'm so sorry I'm late." "It's okay," Lily said, and she sounded like she meant it. "Aunt Maria said you were at a big meeting helping people. That's more important than picking me up every single day." "You're the most important thing," Caleb said, his voice tight. "Always." "I know, Daddy, but I'm safe and fed and having fun. You don't have to worry about me all the time. I'm not a baby anymore. I'm 7 3/4, remember?" She paused. "When are you coming home?" "Soon, 30 minutes. Will you save me some pizza?" "Maybe. If it's really good, I might eat it all." "That's fair. I love you, Bug." "Love you too. Hurry home so we can watch a movie." Caleb hung up and sat for a moment in his office, overwhelmed by gratitude. For his daughter's understanding, for his sister's support, for Madeline's courage, for this chance to be someone who made a difference without losing the parts of himself that mattered most. A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. Rachel stood there, holding a package. "This just arrived for you," she said. "Courier delivery, marked urgent." Caleb took the package, noting the return address, a prestigious law firm in Midtown. His stomach sank. "This is from Vern's lawyers, isn't it?" "Probably. Ms. Cross got one too. They're ramping up the lawsuit." Rachel's expression was worried. "Just so you know, they're naming you personally in the suit now, claiming you assaulted security guards and orchestrated a conspiracy to defame Mr. Vern." "Of course they are." Caleb opened the package and scanned the legal documents. The claims were absurd, painting him as a dangerous vigilante, suggesting his military background made him unstable, implying he'd manipulated Madeline into firing Vern's business relationship. "They're trying to make me the villain." "They're trying to intimidate you," Rachel corrected. "Don't let them. Ms. Cross has the best legal team in the city. They'll handle this." After Rachel left, Caleb called Madeline. "I got the papers." "Me too. My lawyers say it's all bluster. Vern's trying to pressure us into settling." Her voice was calm but tired. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. But Madeline, they're naming me personally. If this goes to trial, my finances, my background, everything about my life becomes public record. That affects Lily." "I know, and I'm sorry. If you want to step back, if you want to—" "I'm not stepping back," Caleb interrupted. "But I need to talk to my daughter. She deserves to know what's happening before she hears about it at school." That night, after pizza and a movie, Caleb sat Lily down for a serious conversation. He explained the lawsuit in terms she could understand, that the man who'd been mean to Ms. Cross was now trying to cause trouble, that there might be news stories, that kids at school might say things. "Are you in trouble?" Lily asked, her face serious. "No, Bug. I didn't do anything wrong, but sometimes doing the right thing makes powerful people angry, and they try to punish you for it." "That's not fair." "No, it's not. But that's how the world works sometimes." Lily thought about this, chewing her bottom lip the way she did when processing difficult concepts. "Daddy, if you knew this would happen, would you still have helped Ms. Cross that night?" It was the same question in different form, the one she'd been asking since this all started. Would he still choose courage over safety? Would he still step forward when staying back was easier? "Yes," Caleb said without hesitation. "Every single time." "Good," Lily nodded firmly, "because that's what heroes do, even when it's hard, even when it costs something." "I'm not a hero, Bug. You are to me." She hugged him tight. "And to Ms. Cross, and to all those people at your work who you're helping. You're a hero to lots of people, Daddy. You just don't see it. The lawsuit dragged on through the following weeks, a background hum of legal maneuvering and depositions. Caleb gave his testimony under oath, describing exactly what had happened the night of the gala. The lawyers tried to twist his words, to make his intervention seem aggressive or inappropriate, but the video evidence was clear. He'd acted calmly, defensively, protecting someone who needed protecting. Meanwhile, the work at Meridian continued. More complaints were investigated. More managers who'd abused their power were held accountable. And slowly, the culture began to shift. Employees started trusting that speaking up wouldn't destroy their careers. Women who'd been harassed came forward. People of color who'd faced discrimination found their voices. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks and mistakes and moments when Caleb wondered if they were making any real difference. But then he'd get a call from someone like Rebecca Torres, thanking him for giving them their voice back, and he'd remember why this mattered. 2 months after that first confrontation, the lawsuit was dismissed. Verna's lawyers couldn't substantiate any of their claims. The judge ruled that Madeline and Meridian had acted appropriately in terminating their business relationship, and that Caleb's intervention had been reasonable and necessary given the circumstances. The news broke on a Friday afternoon. Madeline called Caleb into her office, champagne already opened, Rachel pouring 3 glasses. "We won," Madeline said simply. "Complete dismissal. Vern's lawyers even have to pay our legal fees." Caleb took the glass Rachel offered but didn't drink. "This doesn't fix what he did to you, the humiliation, the cruelty." "No," Madeline agreed, "but it sends a message that bullies don't get to win just because they have money and connections, that sometimes justice actually prevails." She raised her glass. To courage, to speaking up, to refusing to let powerful people crush vulnerable ones. They drank together, and Caleb felt something release in his chest, tension he'd been carrying for months, fear that everything he'd risked would be for nothing. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we keep working," Madeline said. "There are still complaints to investigate, still systems to rebuild, still people who need protecting." She smiled. "Think you're up for it?" "Long as I can still walk my daughter to school," Caleb said. "That's non-negotiable," Madeline confirmed. "Besides, Lily keeps me honest. Every time I think about compromising on our principles, I imagine explaining that compromise to a 7-year-old and realize how ridiculous it sounds." 7 3/4, Caleb corrected, making them both laugh. That weekend, Caleb took Lily to the park, their park, with the rusty swings and the basketball court. They played on the equipment together, him pushing her on the swings, her showing him how high she could climb on the jungle gym. Other parents recognized him now, but the attention had died down somewhat. He was no longer the viral video hero. He was just Caleb Hart, father and ethics director, trying to do better. "Daddy?" Lily said from the top of the slide. "Do you remember when I did my butterfly presentation?" "Of course I do. Your poster's hanging in my office." "I was thinking about it, about how butterflies have to dissolve in the chrysalis before they can become butterflies." She slid down, landing with a thump at his feet. "Do you think you've finished dissolving? Like, are you a butterfly now?" Caleb considered the question seriously. "I think I'm still changing. Maybe I'll always be changing. Maybe that's what growing up means. Never quite finishing, just always becoming." "That's kind of beautiful," Lily said, sounding much older than 7 3/4. "Like, you're not stuck being one thing. You can keep changing into better versions." "Exactly." Caleb pulled her into a hug. "Ciao. Where did you learn to be so wise?" "From you," she said matter-of-factly. "You teach me stuff all the time, about being brave and helping people and not giving up when things are hard." "You teach me too, Bug, every single day." They played until the sun started setting, casting long shadows across the playground. Walking home, Lily's hand in his, Caleb thought about everything that had changed in the past 3 months. He'd gone from invisible janitor to public figure. From someone hiding in safety to someone stepping into risk. From a man afraid his past defined him to someone building a future worth living. But the most important things hadn't changed. He still walked Lily to school every morning. Still helped with homework every night. Still made lunches and fixed bikes and listened to endless stories about friends and teachers and the fascinating world of a 7-year-old. That Monday, Caleb arrived at Meridian to find a crowd gathered in the lobby. Employees were holding signs, not protesting, celebrating. Thank you, ethics team, and culture change matters, and we see you. Jasmine Winters stood at the front, orchestrating the demonstration with quiet determination. What's all this? Caleb asked, genuinely confused. This, Jasmine said, is employees showing appreciation. You've been working so hard for us. We wanted you to know it matters, that we see what you're doing. Caleb felt his throat close. He'd never expected recognition, never wanted it, but seeing these employees, people he'd fought for, investigated for, stood up for, choosing to say thank you, meant more than any award or promotion ever could. Thank you, he managed. But you did the hard part. You spoke up. You trusted the process even when you had no reason to. You're the brave ones. We're all brave together, Jasmine corrected. That's what you taught us. That courage isn't a solo act. It's what happens when good people support each other. The demonstration lasted 15 minutes before everyone returned to work, but the feeling of it lingered. Caleb sat at his desk, looking at Lily's butterfly poster, thinking about metamorphosis and transformation and the slow work of becoming. His phone buzzed. A text from General Foster. Saw the news about the lawsuit. Well done, Sergeant. The military trained you well, but you're using those skills for something even more important now. Proud of you. Another text, this one from Maria. Lily keeps bragging to everyone about her dad, the hero. Just thought you should know you're raising a kid who thinks the world of you. And finally, one from Madeline. Board meeting in an hour. They want to talk about expanding your department, creating regional ethics teams, using Meridian as a model for corporate accountability. Your revolution is spreading. Ready to scale it? Caleb read the messages, feeling the weight and warmth of being seen, being valued, being someone who made a difference. 3 months ago, he'd been invisible, pushing a mop across marble floors, trying to make himself small enough to avoid notice. Now he was visible in ways that still made him uncomfortable, but also mattered in ways he couldn't deny. He was teaching his daughter that courage meant acting despite fear. He was showing employees that systems could change if people refused to accept the unacceptable. He was proving that one person standing up could ripple outward, creating waves that lifted others. The revolution Madeline mentioned was real. Other companies were reaching out, asking how Meridian had transformed its culture. Employees from other organizations were filing complaints, emboldened by seeing justice prevail somewhere. The model they were building, protecting people over profit, accountability over comfort, courage over compliance, was spreading. And at the center of it was Caleb Hart, former soldier, former janitor, forever father, learning that leadership wasn't about titles or authority. It was about showing up every day and choosing to do what was right, even when it cost something, especially when it cost something. That afternoon, Caleb left work early to catch Lily's class play, a production of Charlotte's Web where she played Wilbur the pig with such earnest enthusiasm that Caleb's heart hurt. He sat in the audience surrounded by other parents, filming on his phone, clapping until his hands hurt. Afterward, Lily ran to him, still wearing her pig ears. Did you see? Did you see me save Templeton from the trough?" "You were magnificent," Caleb said, swinging her up into a hug despite the fact that she was getting too big for it. "Best Wilbur I've ever seen." "Ms. Cross came too." Lily pointed toward the back of the room where Madeline sat in her wheelchair, Rachel beside her, both of them clapping. "She said she wouldn't miss it for anything." Caleb caught Madeline's eye across the crowded room. She smiled and nodded, a moment of understanding between two people who'd both learned that strength came in unexpected forms, that disability was just another way of being human, that protecting others required first protecting yourself. Later that night, after Lily was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Caleb sat at his kitchen table and pulled out the note Madeline had given him that first night. The one that said, "Thank you for reminding me what courage looks like." He turned it over and wrote his own message on the back. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be more than I thought I could be. For showing me that transformation is possible. For teaching me that flying doesn't mean forgetting how to crawl. It means using everything you've learned on the ground to navigate the sky. Your janitor turned revolutionary, Caleb." He'd give it to her tomorrow, the small acknowledgement of how much she'd changed his life by simply seeing him and believing he could be more. But tonight, he just sat in his kitchen, listening to his daughter breathe in the next room, feeling the weight and wonder of everything that had changed and everything that had stayed exactly the same. He was still Lily's father. That would never change. But he was also becoming someone bigger, someone braver, someone willing to step forward when others stepped back. The chrysalis had cracked open. The butterfly was learning to fly. And the world, slowly and imperfectly, was becoming a place where speaking up wasn't quite so dangerous, where justice occasionally prevailed, where ordinary people doing extraordinary things could actually make a difference. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be more challenges, more complaints, more powerful people who needed holding accountable. David Chen and Marcus Verne weren't the last bullies, just the first to face consequences under the new system. But it was a beginning, a real one. The kind built not on dramatic moments, but on daily choices to show up and speak up and refuse to look away when others needed help. And for Caleb Hart, former soldier, former janitor, forever father, that was more than enough. That was everything. 6 months later, Lily did another school presentation, this one about heroes. She brought in a photo of Caleb in his military uniform, another of him in his janitorial clothes, and a third of him in his office at Meridian. The title of her presentation was How My Dad Learned to Fly. She explained metamorphosis again, the dissolution and rebuilding, the patient's transformation required. Then she looked directly at the camera her teacher was using to record presentations and said, "My dad taught me that being a hero isn't about never being scared or never making mistakes. It's about trying anyway. It's about helping people even when it's hard. And it's about remembering that who you were and who you are and who you're becoming can all be part of the same story." When Caleb watched the video that night, he cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming gratitude of being seen so clearly by someone who mattered so much. His daughter understood him better than he understood himself. She saw not just the soldier or the janitor or the director, but the person trying to live with integrity across all those roles. "That was beautiful, Bug," he said, holding her close. "It's true, though," Lily said simply. "You're all of those people. And I love all of them." That was the real ending. Not the lawsuit being dismissed or the culture changing or the recognition spreading, but a 7 3/4-year-old child understanding that her father's worth wasn't measured by his title or his visibility or his viral video fame. It was measured by his daily choice to be present, to be honest, to be brave even when brave meant admitting you were terrified. Caleb Hart had learned to fly, but he'd never forgotten how to crawl. And in the space between those two things, between the soldier who'd saved lives under fire and the father who packed lunches with superhero stickers, he'd found exactly who he was meant to be. Not a hero, just someone willing to stand up when everyone else sat down. To speak up when silence was safer, to believe that protecting people mattered more than protecting himself. And in a world that desperately needed more people like that, Caleb Hart's choice to be visible, to be vulnerable, to be both father and fighter, janitor and justice seeker, warrior and witness, that choice changed everything. One person at a time, one complaint at a time, one daily decision at a time. That was how revolutions happened. That was how courage spread. That was how ordinary people became extraordinary, not by being perfect, but by showing up and trying and refusing to let fear dictate who they could become. And so Caleb kept showing up. For Lily, for Madeline, for Jasmine and Rebecca and all the others who'd been silenced and needed someone to believe them. He kept choosing courage over comfort, kept protecting people over profit, kept proving that transformation was possible if you were willing to do the work. The butterfly had learned to fly, but it never forgot the caterpillar it used to be. And in remembering, in honoring both the ground and the sky, it showed the world what real strength looked like. Not loud, not flashy, just consistent, courageous, and deeply, profoundly human. That was Caleb Hart's story. That was his revolution. That was his gift to his daughter, and to everyone who'd ever felt invisible or powerless or afraid. The reminder that courage doesn't shout. It stands up quietly when everyone else sits down. And that's more than enough to change the world.